Hello and welcome. It is April 2026, and you know what that means? It means coming up next month, there are going to be two new sets added to Revolution Custom Standard. Um, I won't hold you in suspense. The two sets this May are Innistrad Witching Hour by Matt and Valir, The Banished Isle by Coveted Peacock. So two very spooky sets. There's going to be cultists and witches and ghosts. Just in time for a spooky season, by which I mean May. Uh, I think both these sets are really awesome. I'm so glad they were chosen. I'm really looking forward to this rotation. And in this video, I'm going to be going over all the cards I think are relevant and how I think they might be used. Um, just some caveats. One, I am doing this review a little later than usual because I was a little busy slash depressed earlier. And for that reason, I already know about a number of the nerfs and balance changes that are going to happen. So I'm going to try not to let that influence my decisions. Um, or my reviews, but if it slips through, just don't tell the curators about that, okay? We're all chill. We're all chill. Thanks. Um, Second, as I just said, a lot of these cards are going to be subject to nerfs or changes before the end of the month. So this is kind of just an overview of the important packages. If any particular card really excites you, maybe don't get like too attached. And lastly, I'm, I'm just one rodent. It's definitely possible I missed something, missed rules interactions, missed powerful cards that I should have included. Uh, you can go to Escape from Limbo and just look at the set galleries or search F Future or F Future minus F Standard if you want to check out these sets for yourself. They're really awesome. But before we do that, if we want to talk about the metagame impact going into the next season of Revolution Custom Standard, we need to talk about what's going away because Sibiros is rotating, and Sibiros had some very important cards. Starting with some Sibiros only things, Colorless Mana was a theme in Sibiros on cards, especially on Ziv. Replisparked was the headliner for the strategy, although Ties to the Machine remained a playable card until the end. Big theme. Ziv was a big pull into Colorless. We didn't see them much recently, but they were always haunting around there. And that's no longer going to be a thing because no other set cares about Colorless Mana. Solidarity was a mechanic only from Sibiros, and so it's the Solidarity deck, which plays all 1-drops and kills you on turn 3. That deck will no longer exist, thank goodness. There were a ton of usable instant and sorcery payoffs in Sibiros. Savvy Smith, Force Ejection, and High Voltage were probably the most relevant ones, but Brass Oracle, Gaigeka, and Covetous Frostworm all had their moment in the sun. All of these cards are gone. There's actually a whole bunch of new instant and sorcery payoffs, so this strategy is by no means dead, but this is certainly going to change how the Spellslinger decks, which were already quite strong, especially with Clash at Mistrit Vale, are going to play out. And artifact matters. I think Wayward Drex probably the most artifacty card on this slide because the backside is a construct. It gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. But all the playable Cyber Soul cards, Program Pursuer was good with no other artifact creatures, but you did often see it alongside stuff like Rooftop Slink that flips into an artifact creature. Imposing Iteration saw occasional playing like berries type shenanigans. There's actually just basically no artifact matters themes in Standard right now, unless you count Karaz Monument. So these are pretty much going to be absent from Rev for a bit. Moving on to staples, there were a ton of aggro staples for red, but not so much like cheap aggressive creatures. The biggest loss, probably of all the cards in Sibiros, is Terminal Impact. This burn spell, X and a red, deals damage equal to the mod spell to cast it, any target. Uncounterable. This was, I put it on the aggro slide, but it was good in mid range and also control, and also it was a combo finisher, so infinite mono combos. And you put it in sideboards sometimes to be control. It was good everywhere. Every red deck played it. Not literally a red deck. There's like 14 red decks in the world. I think 12 of them were playing Terminal Impact, and the other two should be. This card's just incredibly powerful, and it will certainly just reduce the power of red across the board and force people to diversify their removal suites. Ardor, Forefront of Freedom, was a moderately played 4 mana aggro threat. 4 mana 3/3 gives your creature token +1, makes creature tokens fair but powerful card that was always kind of in the conversation. Jericho Ageless Wanderer. I know PTM was a big fan of this one. Aggro Planeswalker can generate a lot of card advantage at the top end of your kind of low curve aggro deck. There's definitely replacements for this. You play Crumbling Tower, I guess, now. Gift of Inspiration, similarly kind of card advantage for your aggro deck. You either make 1/1s or you get to impulse draw cards um, as you hit your opponents. This also saw occasional play. Um, Out of mid range, there was Ley Shard, 2 mana artifact that ramps you onto turn 4 while cantripping. We have new 2 mana ramp in these sets, so if you still want to ramp to 4 drops on turn 3 in any deck, you still got ways to do that, even if you're not in green. Uh, Two of the 4 drops you often ramped into were Inner Ring's Pupil, which really benefited from coming down early and or being defended by hand attack to strip away your opponent's answers to the somewhat fragile body. Solis Syndicate Pariah saw some play as just a card advantage engine 4 mana planeswalker. Uh, Vasilisa was a generically interesting green 5 drop. The green 5 drops were not all that going into this rotation. And so Vasilisa sometimes had the chops to get there. Stella's Journal saw occasional play just as a value draw engine, which it always kind of impressed me when it saw the field. And it was also an important part of venture capitalist packages as the kind of only 0 mana artifact you could get. Don't worry, we're getting another 0 mana artifact, so you can still do that. Uh, these are all going. Out of Control, the big loss is Laystone of Being. Uh, Life gain engine makes a 1/1 on turn 1 to block, can do silly things later with Rejuvenation Session. Um, all sorts of crazy interactions with Laystone of Being. That's going. Invasion's End was a 4 mana blue sweeper. I really like this out of kind of value, not creatureless decks, where you'd play this and it would stop all your opponent's aggro creatures from doing what they wanted to do, but all of your value creatures that got value without attacking would be just fine. That's kind of how you broke the symmetry on Invasion's End, which is pretty cool. Jetstream Cruiser, we're a little lacking for big, stupid 5 mana control finisher with flash and hard to kill. Jetstream Cruiser was our best option. Could blink itself, could blink other creatures. Uh, we're gonna have to find something else for that slot. There's actually not that many options. For combo, Sibiros had a wild number of stuff for combo decks. Get Your Wish being just good in all sorts of different combo decks as a way to search up your combo pieces and cast them immediately. This card was always nuts. 3 mana tutor that also generates mana. What a silly card. Somehow never got nerfed for its entire time, which I would not have bet. Festered Effluvium was a frequently played Reanimator card. X and a black, generates tons of mana and value, kind of gives you an alternate reanimation plan while also enabling reanimation plan. Bind Life to Steel was an important card out of Unearth decks, but also Aristocrats decks, but also various other small creature uh, combo decks. Just a very efficient mass reanimation spell. And Hallowed Chamber was very important to the Damned synergies and Aristocrats decks because it could turn into 2 treasure tokens even after its nerf. And lastly, out of the sideboard, Looming Psyhawk, probably the second most important loss out of Sibiros. Um, this very important token hate card always had tons of things to hate on, always a very important sideboard card. We're a little lacking in ways to hate on non-creature tokens after this leaves, so that might be a boon to certain decks. And Conscript was also a frequently seen sideboard card out of aggro decks as a way to fight the fair game. Okay, mostly fair game. So yeah, Sibiros, it was quite a set. It's a set that bore the mark of the personality of its creator, let's say. And I loved it. But it is gone now. Great set symbol, by the way. I really love the Sibiros set symbol. Um, I guess you can still play with it this month in Archaeologist, but you're running out of time. Uh, because next month it will be replaced by Innistrad, Witching Hour. So Innistrad is a really cool kind of gothic horror setting, a little like Eltensia. Um, and it's built around 5 allied creature types, 5 allied archetypes that each have a creature type and a mechanic, or one of them has 2 mechanics. And there's but it's not a color imbalanced set like Twiltry or So Dusk of Time. The enemy color pairs also have the same number of gold cards and kind of archetypes of their own. White blue has spirits, and the spirits have possess. Well, some of them do. Um, when they die as a creature, they come back as an aura. This is a common; it just gives the enchanted creature flying, so you put it on your own things. But there's also ones that you want to put on your opponent's creature. Kind of gives your creatures resilience against removal, although not board wipes. Uh, Blue and black have zombies, and they have infuse, which I think is going to get a rename, but I'm not going to tell you to what because of the infuse mechanic in standard. To infuse N, you exile a creature and an instant or sorcery from your graveyard to make an NN zombie creature token. So you need to be filling your graveyard and to be playing instants and sorceries and creatures. But if you do, you get this kind of efficient token creation mechanic, kind of cool. Black and red get vampires, and they get gorge. So when a creature gorges, you can discard a non-land card or sack another creature. And if you do either of those things, you put a +1/+1 counter on the gorging creature and draw a card. So it's a sack outlet that lets you sack creatures to draw cards. It's also you can rummage away cards to draw cards, and you get +1/+1 counters as you do that. Kind of, looters and aristocrats are two strategies that Revolution has a lot of right now. So this will fit right in. Red and green have wolves and werewolves, and they have well, there's a mechanic I'm not showing here, which is all the werewolves are double face cards, and the mechanic where on the front side, if no one casts spells for a turn, they flip, and on the back side, if a player casts 2 spells in a turn, they flip. But they also have savage, which seems like a mean way to describe werewolves. They should get a better agent if people are going to be talking about them like this. Anyway, the creature is savage if it's transformed or is power greater than its base power. Works well with the kind of green-red counter stuff we already have going on in Rev. And green and white have human, and they have Concord, which is a returning mechanic, I believe, by the Egg or Spiraled. It's by someone. It's from MSM. Concord is a threshold mechanic that cares about having 4 or more card types among permanents you control. So creature and land are easy, but then the other 4 are artifact, enchantment, planeswalker, and battle. Valir, the Banished Isle, has a kind of similar structure. It's enemy color creature types. So Valir, kind of this not urban fantasy, low fantasy environment setting. Oh yes, I forgot. Innistrad, I mentioned earlier, is by Matt, also designer of Kutalia and co-designer of Duelists of Varro. Making Matt our second 3-time designer. It's Zangi and Matt at 3, Cajun at 2, everyone else at 1. So we're gonna have to work pretty hard if we want to catch up to Zangi and Matt here. But I'm working on it. Valir is designed by our very own coveted Peacock, content creator and all-around swell lady. It's great to have her on the set designer team. That's right. Onto the mechanics and creature types. White black is warlocks, and warlock mechanic is just acolyte tokens. They're 0/1 warlocks, and you pay 1 and sack them to surveil 1. So very much a kind of go wide sacrifice strategy. Black and green is mercenaries. They have pursuit. You can cast them from your graveyard by exiling the card and by sacking a non-land permanent. So they're kind of a sacrifice deck, but also a graveyard deck. Pursuit goes on creatures and goes on it goes on instants and sorceries too, kind of a flashback variant. Green and blue is druids. They have ancient. This is a returning mechanic from Blood Like Rivers by Pipsqueak. You're ancient if you have 8 or more total lands and play it in your graveyard. So green, blue, just dump lands into your graveyard, ramp to lots of lands, get value. Blue and red have the canon mechanic Spectacle, and they have rogues. You can cast a card for Spectacle cost if an opponent lost life this turn. So you just want ways to swing in for value with your Spectacle cards. Swing in with small creatures, hit your opponent for a little damage, then you get value. And red and white have rebels, and they have muster. Whenever you cast a creature spell, something happens. I think they're not all creatures, but they all have whenever you cast a creature spell, and that's mustered. So I'm going to be starting off with the staples, that is cards that can go in a large variety of different decks, and then I'll be going over into cards that go into the more specific archetypes, specific synergy packages. And for staples, I'm going to be starting with lands, then going through in Wooburg order, then gold cards, and then colorless cards. And the most important lands coming in this rotation are the check lands. You may remember these from Duelists of Varroa. They're originally by Korikos. Um, Pool of Light and Fungal Mire here, but we have all 10 of them. They have 2 basic land types, and they enter tapped unless you control a basic of one of those types. Sorry. Got my water here. So, there's a number of reasons to play these. First of all, if you're a 2-color deck and you have 4+ mana value cards that you want to play, these are really useful. Because previously you had a problem if you had too many fast lands, like you had the Paths and Temple of Origins and Primal Fissure all in your 2-color decks, which meant you had a surprising lack of untapped turn 4 sources. So now you can kind of swap these in. Probably they replace Paths or they replace a couple of Temple of Origins, and they give you an untapped land later into the game, hopefully. So that lets you smooth your mana base. If you're a very aggressive 2-color deck that doesn't have a ton of 4 drops, then you just play the fast lands instead. The other thing, these are our best lands with basic land types. So Pool of Light is a plains for Contest Coordinator. People used to play Hopeful Soul Space because it helped enable you could find it off Contest Coordinator, and also it worked with Welkin Eviction. Now you don't have to do that anymore. Now you can enable those with better lands. Yeah, I think overall these, like in 3-color decks, I would not play these at all. And overall, I think they're a lower priority than like Shock lands and usually Temple and Fissure. But they're good, and I'm glad to have them around. Moving on to, oh right, the Desolate Lands from Innistrad. These are really pushed. They are all monocolor lands, and they cost a life every time you tap them. But in exchange for this, they enter untapped on turns 1 and 2, although they'll enter tapped later. And whenever they enter, tapped or untapped, you surveil 1. And if you have Threshold, that's 7 cards in your graveyard, they all have a very good instant speed sack effect. The white one is 3 mana for Raise the Alarm. The blue one is 3 mana to draw 2 and then tuck 1. The black one is 3 mana Raise Dead. The red one is 4 mana Lightning Bolt. And the green one is 4 mana for Basri's Solidarity. These seem incredibly powerful. I think you just put a ton of these into all of your decks. They're probably a little tougher to include. Once again, they're more fast lands. We have so many fast lands in Rev right now. And I think if especially if you're aggressive and if you're aggressive, then the fast land is more valuable to you because you care more about the early turns, and paying life is less important because your opponent's life matters more than yours. But even control decks, I think, are likely to run these just because of how valuable they are. That Surveil 1, just on its own, is enormous. Moving on to some generic, interesting kind of fixing lands. Secluded Courtyard is a fixing land for Typal decks. Both of these sets have significant Typal seams. And if your deck is really, really Typal, you could play Secluded Courtyard, enter untapped, tap for colorless, and you get to choose a creature type, and you can add a mana of any color, but only to cast that creature type. Sorry. This is kind of a margin. Even if you're really, really deep into Typal, even then this card's often kind of marginal because it doesn't help cast your non-creature cards, which you're gonna have, which can be quite awkward. But if you're a lot of colors and you're heavily Typal, sometimes you include this. Forgotten Foundations it enters tapped, and when you do Surveil 1, and it's an Evolving Wilds. When you can sack it, get a basic, put it on the battlefield, then shuffle. I think if you're looking for an Evolving Wilds, and there are certain decks, like the Ancient deck that wants lands in its graveyard, you're playing a Roar, you want lands in your graveyard. Lots of good reasons to want that. Just you're a many-color deck and you want an Evolving Wilds just for the fixing. This is a pretty good Evolving Wilds. Surveil 1 on a tap land is a deal we've seen people take many times before. And kind of out of place here is Solstice Circle. There's a whole cycle of these, but the reason I'm drawing attention to this one now is because this is a green-white one, and it enters tapped unless you behold a human. And basically every green-white deck is going to have a ton of humans. Like half the creatures in Revolution are humans. So I'm going to categorize Solstice Circle as just kind of a generically good green-white fast land. It's going to enter untapped early in the game pretty reliably, just off the strength of like your Melon or whatever. We have some colorless lands. The Shrouded Seas is a weird one. It's a legendary land, tapped for colorless, and when it dies, you draw a card. The curators are being really meticulous this time about not giving us ways to blow up lands. But if we did have ways to blow up lands, this would be a pretty good one to blow up. I really just cannot think of any way to sacrifice lands in Revolution right now. There's also Humming Furnace. I'm very excited for this one. It's a land that you can have it enter untapped, or you can have it enter tapped, and if you do, you get a weapon token. That's an equipment and equip 2. Gives equipped creature +1/+1. Um, this does a ton of things. It's an artifact. The weapon is an artifact. It has an activated ability. It's a non-land permanent. It has a type. It's I imagine if your mono base can support this, this is one of our better colorless utility lands that the format currently has access to, and I have a lot of applications I'm looking forward to with it. Moving on to white. The white 1-drop suite going into this rotation. Kitsune Matriarch kind of ruled the roost as a very powerful 1-drop, but required you to be a tokens deck, whereas Melon was kind of your more generic 1-drop if you're playing some kind of mid-range deck that had bigger creatures it wanted to protect. We're getting some new options as well. Moldgraph Stewards is a 1-mana 2/1, and if you have 4 or more creatures, whenever it attacks, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on something, and for 4 mana, you can give an attacking creature indestructible. This is reasonably powerful. Probably goes in the same deck as Kitsune Matriarch. Kind of tokens go wide 1-drop. It's got some potential. We have 2 1-drops with mustard. Chapel Crasher is a simpler one, just a 1-mana 1/1. Whenever you cast a creature spell, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. And if that spell is a rebel, and Chapel Crasher and the other 1-drop I'm talking about here are rebels, and a lot of the good aggro creatures in Valir are rebels, you get a +1/+1 counter instead. We had whatever that creature was from Uldun that got +1/+1 whenever a creature you control entered. This is only when you cast a creature spell, but kind of similar vibes of it's going to be a 2/2 most of the time, even a 3/3 occasionally, and it picks up some +1/+1 counters along the way. Could definitely see this scene play, even in decks that don't even have that many rebels. Your other 1-drop with mustard is Volwood Warder, 1-mana 1/2, and first time you cast a creature spell each turn, you get Surveil 1, second time is draw a card, third time put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. If you're casting 2 creature spells in a turn pretty often, I'm thinking a deck that has a ton of 1-drops, and you're going with this one into 2 other 1-drops on turn 2, then I could definitely see this doing some thing, keep your hand refueled so you can keep double mustarding. One of the big pushes from both of these sets is we're trying to bring white-red, creature-heavy, low-curve, kind of generically good aggro back. It's kind of been on the wayside in Revolution for quite a while. Going up the curve to 2, the big headliner is Geist Marshal. Our 2-mana white creature, we had some good ones going into this. We had Resolute Reinforcements if you're a tokens deck. Contest Coordinator required some build around, was very strong. Skyray Tender got nerfed, but still pretty good of ways to blink it. But now we have a good best generic white 2-drop in Geist Marshal. 2-mana 1/1, flying, and whenever it attacks, you can either get a 1/1 or give your other attacking spirits +1/+1 until end of turn. And it and the 1/1 both have flying. So just on its own, 2-mana 1/1, whenever it attacks, make a 1/1, 2-mana 1/1 flyer, whenever it attacks, make a 1/1 flyer, is a crazy good attacker. If they don't interact with that immediately, you're going to get snowballing value, kind of takes over the game just on its own, hard to interact with, you need a flying blocker. But also, once you have this big board, instead of getting a new token, you can give all your other tokens +1/+1. And also, it has Possess, and it gives the attack creature to the creature it possesses, which can include the 1/1 spirit tokens that it made. So if they don't kill this thing immediately, like before it gets to attack once, they're not going to get rid of the attract trigger. It's going to demand 2 removal spells to stop the value engine. This thing is incredibly scary, really going to put your opponent to the removal check very quickly. And if you go 1-drop into this, then they really just have no way out. Other 2-drops, less exciting, but still have potential. Devil's Horn Hunter is kind of a sideboard 2-drop. 2-mana 2/2 flash. When it enters, enter triggers don't work for the rest of the turn, and you can pay 1 and sack it to make enter triggers don't work. Got a lot of enter triggers in Rev, as Magic always has these days. All the O-rings, notably, are enter triggers, as are All the non-creature permanents that make tokens when they enter. There's just a ton of them. Quick reminder that the first chapter of Saga is not an enter trigger. Yeah, I can see this seeing sideboard play, and you can get it off Contest Coordinator, which is always a nice feature of a sideboard card. Renegade True Heart's a 2-mana 1/2 flash flyer. When it enters, you can return one of your creatures to your hand, and if you do, the True Heart gets a +1/+1 counter. This is a shape of card we've seen do some work before. 2-mana 2/3 flash flying is definitely appreciable stats, and we got good things to bounce like Contest Coordinator and Skyray Tender these days. So I could just see this making it, but Geist Marshals really is up the headliner. Moving up the curve, to be honest, the white creature sleep was looking a little sad going into this month. Like at 3-mana, you were doing what? Containment Seraph, and at 4-mana, what? Aegis of Grace were your best options. We're getting some new higher curve ones. Moonsilver Archangel is a good card just on its own, reasonable card just on its own, but it's also very good in Angel Scam, like the Radiant Devotee deck that gives its Angels Convoke, because it has an X cost. You can get that X pretty high if you're convoking with a lot of creatures. It's 3 mana for a 3/3 flash flying, or you can pay 5 mana, and if you do, you get a Monument or a Cloister. The Monument is a Glorious Anthem, and the Cloister is an Oblivion Ring. And for 7 mana, you get 2, and you can pick the same one more than once. I think this is more flashy than strong, just because it's a lot of mana. But if at the top end of a deck that is otherwise interested in 5-drops and can swing the triple white, I think this is at least in the conversation. Renegade Recruiter is a 4-drop for a mustard deck or any deck that wants to recycle ETBs. 4-mana 4/4 Vigilance. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you tap a creature. And you can pay 2 mana to bounce a creature you control to its owner's hand. So there's some nice things you can do. If you have a cheap flash creature, for instance, you can use this on your opponent's turn to just kind of sink in mana and tap down all their stuff, and hopefully that flash creature has an enter trigger. Other than that, little fragile and non-impactful the turn it comes down, so I don't see this seeing a ton of play, but in kind of a mid-range grind fest, this could be the thing that gets you repeated value by bouncing and replaying all your creatures over and over again. We have, for the first time in a while, a real 4-mana Wrath in Revolution. 2 white beyond comprehension. Destroy all creatures. But each player that controls 3 or more creatures does get to surveil too. I think you don't gotta play Clash of Doors Cross anymore. This really opens up the possibility of blue-white control, of red-white control. Yeah, just this is going to be very important for Jeskai control, which I think was already the strongest control layout going into this month, going into the next season. Yeah, it's just very strong. This is going to really shape the way that aggro decks are built. They're going to have to respect, I need to have a plan for Beyond Comprehension, either stuff that lets me prevent them from casting it, or ways to kill them before they can cast it, or ways to kind of survive it and continue to win after it resolves. But if you want to fight control decks, we have this very nasty curse called Curse of Eerie Streets. 3 mana, enchants your opponent, and whenever they cast their first non-creature spell, they either gotta pay 2 or give you a card and a 1/1 flyer. If you put this on a control player, their best hope is they get to immediately Fateful Ascent it, and pay 4 to destroy your 3-drop and give you a chart. And that's their best case scenario. If they don't have Fateful Ascent immediately, then there's just no good way for them to ever get out of this. Really nasty sideboard card. There's a couple of kind of other sideboard cards I draw attention to. Kassar's Charm, 1 mana instant, it deals 2 damage to a tapped creature, so that's a mediocre removal spell, but you can also make your opponent stack an enchantment or exile cards from graveyards. Could see this just making it as a little bit of flexible sideboard tech. Clash of Curse is a naturalize, 1 to white for an instant. You can destroy an artifact, enchantment, or token. We don't really have a widely played disenchant, I guess it would be, right now. But we're beginning to see decks that are built around kind of 3-4 mana artifacts and enchantments, especially enchantments. So this could become a relevant sideboard card, and there are a ton of good tokens in the meta too, like the Nightfall token, for instance. That's a big one. Guardian's Charm is 2 and a white for an instant. You can exile a non-land permanent with mana value 4 or less. That's the made mode, and that's a pretty good mode on 2 and a white instant. And you have 2 buyout modes. One, you can reprieve an instant or sorcery, but you don't get to draw cards. That's just really desperation mode if you need delay a board wipe or something. Or give a creature +1/+1 first strike and lifelink until end of turn. That'll win a combat, gain you some life. I think you're mostly playing this for the first mode, and the first mode's pretty good. So, um, if you're if you're looking for kind of flexible removal that hits all sorts of non-land permanents, but you're not in the market for Sanctum of Repression for some reason, then I think this is your next best option. Moving on to blue. Blue doesn't get a ton of interesting creatures. I think I'm showing off three of them here. The big one is Swift Step Robber. This is 2 mana, 2/1 flash flying, can't block, and when it enters, another target creature becomes a copy of it permanently. Blue Green Flash is already a deck, and the 2-drop it plays is usually Florizoa, which is, a fine card, but kind of more of a value card and not that powerful. This, I think, blows Florizoa out of the water. If you're going to play a kind of blue X, blue green, blue red, blue white, kind of flash, tempo, interacty, instant speed deck, this is an amazing include that I can't wait to see in action. Move the curve to 3 mana, or 4 if you really messed up. Rooftop Observer. It's a 4 mana 3/4, but it's Spectacle for 1 blue blue. And if Spectacle is enabled, you get Future Sight. You can look at the top card of your library and play it and play it. But only on your turn if the opponent's lost life this turn. Once again, if you're a creature heavy blue deck and you can reliably enable Spectacle, this is a ton of card advantage for your Spectacle deck. You can even cast cards for Spectacle costs off the top. And up to 5 mana. As I said earlier, talking about Jetstream Cruiser, we don't have a ton of great control finishers. The control finisher of choice so far has been Iviana. But Iviana, she's not perfect. She eats up a lot of your sideboard space, and she's not that great against aggro. She doesn't do much the turn she comes down. So if you're looking for a different kind of tap out control finisher, you could play Juniper's Awakening. 3 blue blue enchantment. Beginning of your end step, you get an XX elemental, where X is the amount of mana you spend to cast non-creature spells this turn. So you play this, you immediately get a 5/5, and then if they don't deal with the enchantment, you kind of, as long as you're casting spells on your turn, you continue to get big elementals. Seems like a fun kind of control or even kind of slow spell-based mid-range finisher. Actually quite powerful. I'm pretty confident in this one. We got a number of 2 mana counter spells coming down the pipeline. Attuned Rebuttal is kind of a build around sideboard one. You counter a creature spell unless the controller pays 3, but if you're ancient, you counter any spell unless the controller pays 3. I think if you're looking for a counterspell to bring in for creature heavy matchups, the specific expensive creatures you want to deal with, I could see the Seemix coming in. And if you're an ancient deck, like you're a deck that's good at enabling ancient, then I think you still put it in the sideboard, but it's like you're more willing to bring it in. Uh, there's 2 other kind of more generically playable uh, instance. Our usual 2 mana counterspell of choice, I think, was Overrule Will going into this. That's the one that mills a player for 3. I think that one's getting a lot better, actually. Both Valir and Innistrad have significant graveyard seams. So Overrule Will stocks are definitely rising, but it's got competition. Distilled Essence is 1 blue for an instant. Counter target spell on controller pays 2, and if they can pay the 2, you get to infuse 2. That is, exile a creature and an instant sorcery from your graveyard to make a 2/2 zombie. Um, and they also learn the steps. Blue, blue, instant, mill 2 cards, then exile any number of cards to counter a spell unless the controller pays X. X is number of card types among cards exiled this way. So getting 2 is going to be pretty reliable, especially if you like cracked a Primal Fissure on turn 1 or something. And 3 and higher is completely achievable later in the game. So I think the way it breaks down, if you really want to fill your graveyard, you play Overrule Will. If you have no particular reason to play any of them, you play Distilled Essence, and if you can afford double blue, you play Learn the Steps. I think Learn the Steps is actually quite strong if your mana base can support double blue, because you do need this to be available on turn 2. Some other random non-creature cards. On Top of the World is kind of our replacement for Invasion Zen. Choose a creature. That's not optional. You have to choose a creature. And you return all creatures not chosen this way to their owner's hand. So you want to have one good creature that you want to keep, and then you bounce all the rest of your creatures that you don't care about or want to have bounced, and you also bounce all of your opponent's creatures. This is fine. Honestly, I think if you're a blue deck looking for a board wipe, you're almost certainly playing a second color that has better board wipes than this. There's incredibly good white, black, and red board wipes in Revolution right now. But it's at least interesting. Especially if you're kind of blinkety bouncing your own creatures. But I don't fully believe in it. Cool card, cool designs though. Sought Scour is another excellent cantrip. We got a lot of good cantrips in Rev right now. We got Stargazing. We got what's the one? Discern. Those are the big ones, but they're pretty good. Sought Scour is another one. Instant speed. This is the canon reprint. 1 mana. You mill 2 cards and then draw a card. So, as I said with Overrule Will, lots of reasons to fill your graveyard between these two sets. And so, if you're doing that, this is your cantrip of choice. Um, but yeah, it's good. Stargazing and Discern are going to give it tough competition. And another card that I think just barely possible to see play. If you got a blue deck that really wants to bounce your own creatures, you can play Evasive Flourish, 2 and a blue. You bounce one of your creatures and one of their non-land permanents, and you draw a card. Just efficient enough I could see it happening, but probably not. Black gets an absolute ton of generically powerful stuff. Starting off with the 2 drops, which Black already had a pretty good 2 drop if you haven't heard, but getting new ones. And they're all warlocks from Valir. Malicious Pact Maker is a 2 mana 2/2 comes with an acolyte token. Already, that's not a bad baseline. And whenever you surveil, you put a +1/+1 counter on the Pact Maker, and it gains menace until end of turn. So that's threat of activation. You can attack this into your opponent's 2/2s with impunity because you can sack the acolyte instant speed. There's not a ton of surveil going on in Rev right now. I think Receive is the most commonly played source of surveilling, and that works pretty well with this. You can kind of line it up so you surveil the turn after you play it. Um, Another great Warlock, Exultant Shepherd, 1 in a black for a 2/1. Being upkeep, you draw cards that you can either lose 3 life or sack another creature. As usual with Bob-like effects, they're just good in aggro decks. This one gives you the buyout of Sacrifice, which is a theme in both sets as well. We're going to see tons of things that make you want to sacrifice creatures and give you things to sacrifice. But I think just like you can also just be really aggressive. If you're really aggressive, you don't have to sacrifice creatures. You can just eat the 3 life and kill your opponent with the cards you draw. Crypt Tiller. This is actually, I think Crypt Tiller is even though it's the uncommon of these three, I think it's the one I'm highest on. 2 on a 2/1. When it enters, each player discards a card if you want, and then if you discard a non-land card, you get an Acolyte token. So if you're a deck that wants to has non-land cards it wants to go in its graveyard, you got Scuttling Cicada, you got Dawnsworn Survivor. Um, what are the other big ones? I forget. There's other ones. Believe me. You got Seafloor Treasures. You got Discern. Then Crypt Tiller just like 2 on a 2/1 lets you bin one of those cards. Oh, Reanimation Decks. Obviously, you can bin your Privilege Escalation. Your opponent has to discard a card, and you get a 2 mana for a 2/1 and 0/1. But you're pretty much on rate with the creatures you're getting for your doing this. And it has all sorts of other modes. If you like your hand, you don't gotta make anyone discard. If you have no cards in hand, you can make them discard anyways. I mean, this card just has all the upsides. I expect this to be a staple played black shoot up in any deck that has a graveyard theme. Going up to 3, our previous best black 3 was, what, Vardo Ravelon? That doesn't even count. That's a black-green card. But we're getting a really, really good 3 in Soya. Nile Executioner, 1 black for a 3/3 bird mercenary. And whenever she attacks, defending player discards a card, and if they discarded a land card, or if they didn't discard a card at all, you draw a card and lose 1 life. So this is going to either rip a non-land card out of their hand, or it's going to be a 2-for-1, a 2 points of card advantage whenever she attacks. Also, whenever one of our players discard one of our cards, you put a loyalty counter on her, and you can pay green and put a loyalty counter and transform her. So there's a whole cycle of these in Valir. She transforms into a Planeswalker, Soya Guild Pariah, who has no mercy, so whenever she gets hit, you destroy that creature. +1 to drain a point for 2 and surveil 2. -1, regrow for permanent. -2, make a 1/1 with Death Touch. This is a pretty good Planeswalker. The play pattern here, first of all, the Planeswalker is pretty good, but honestly, I would play Soya in a deck that couldn't generate green mana. I think it's just our best generically good 3-drop in black. Probably in a lot of colors. That attack trigger is just so mean. But if you don't have a good attack with Soya, or if you really need to regrowth a permanent card for some reason, or if your opponent has a block and you want to ding them for 2 because that sets up lethal quickly, yeah, pay green, Transformer. The Planeswalker is also excellent, very difficult to deal with, going to get you value either with the permanent card or the 1/1 Death Touch pretty much immediately. The +1 is going to really annoy your opponent and be something they have to deal with because it's draining them for 2 every turn. And when they deal with it, they're going to have to lose something. Another 3-drop that I think is much less important, but still very much usable. Veteran Hunter. 2 and a black, 3/2. You choose one of your opponent's creatures, and they can either sack it, pay 3 life, or discard a card. So, they get lots of options. They could probably do something that's not too bad for them. But another pursuit for 1 black. So you can sack any random permanent you got lying around to bring this back. Good in kind of a graveyard deck that has sack fodder. Black's got some good removal coming up. Go for the Gut is X and a black. You mill X cards, and then a creature gets -1/-1 for each card in your graveyard. It's a sorcery, so I think this is probably worse than most of our other black removal spells. But if you're really filling your graveyard, then you can. Then this will eventually become 1 black mana, kill any creature, with the upside of letting you mill if you have extra mana to spare. One thing I will say, drawing attention to this card and a lot of cards between these two sets, we have pretty good graveyard hate. Hellia Layspire, the battle whose name I forget, um, Crucible of the Burning Sun, can all like turn off your graveyard pretty efficiently. So I'm a little skeptical of graveyard synergy cards that just do absolutely nothing if your graveyard is empty and there's a Crucible in play. Um, so like if your opponent, it's gonna be really trouble if your opponent plays their sideboard card and it turns off your removal spells. That's a reason I'm a little skeptical of this one. Beyond the Shroud is a 1 black mana for a sorcery. Exile creature or planeswalker if it's mana value 2 or less, or you could sack a creature to exile any creature or planeswalker. There's definitely reasons to be sacrificing creatures. We got a very healthy aristocrats deck that could want a bone shards like this, and it has the buyout mode. Sorcery speed really hurts, and Twilight Ambush is a really good card, so you might not see play anyways, but definitely worth considering in that kind of deck. Deadly Invitation is our new best in Fest. Previously, we played Aspis Venefier, 1 black, give all creatures -2/-2 another turn, draw a 7-drop. But Deadly Invitation is 1 black, give creatures -2/-2. But if a creature an opponent controls would die this turn, exile instead. This is better than Aspis Venefier because, unlike Aspis Venefier, it actually does something against Envoy of the Fallen Aristocrats decks. Normally, you just couldn't bring in board wipes against them because they just wanted their creatures to die, and so you wouldn't actually accomplish anything. This is a board wipe you're much happier running in general, and of course it's also just good against aggro, which aggro looks properly well supported going into this. But the hits keep coming. Black has a 5 mana value mid range card, 3 black for a 5/5 human mercenary, League of Their Own. Got Menace. Whenever it enters or attacks, you can exile all creature card from a graveyard to gain 3 life, land to get a treasure token, and non-creature non-land to draw a card. Just 5 mana 5/5 Menace gets you value whenever it enters or attacks. Not blowing the roof off, but definitely interesting. If you're looking for a 5 mana value play. Listen In is a 1 mana sorcery. You look at your opponent's hand, and then you can exile a creature, enchantment, or battle card, and a creature, enchantment, or battle card from their graveyard. So our current best 1 mana hand attack is Duress. Duress is a widely played kind of sideboard card. Listen In, it doesn't hit against every deck. Like, for example, Jeskai Control is a deck that consists mostly of instants, sorceries, and planeswalkers. So it has a chance of missing, but I could definitely see this becoming a sideboard card. Exiling is certainly very relevant going into this meta. And kind of whether you want this or Duress or even Absentia is really just a metagame call. It's going to depend on how the meta shakes up. The Founder's Hunt Begin is a tutor, 3 black sorcery. You can search your library or sideboard for a card and put it into your hand. And it pursues for 1 black, pay 3 life, sack an online permanent. I don't know. Tutors, especially this card can tutor twice. It's going to be used to assemble some kind of combo by Lee. I just know it. I don't know what the combo is. It's not, like, super efficient, but tutors always find a way to break things. But the hits just never stop coming. Gisa's Breakthrough is 1 black mana for an instant. You exile a card from a graveyard. Sorry, you don't have to do anything. You can just draw a card. Or you can exile a non-creature card from a graveyard and draw a card. Or you can exile a creature card from a graveyard and make a tap 2/2. If you're interested in 1 mana instants that draw a card, zombies, exiling things from graveyards, this is just a very low cost to include black cantrip. With some synergy potential in lots of different ways. Horrific Stitching is 2 black. You can either give all creatures -3/-3, or have each player discard 3 cards. And then you get a trigger on the stack. You can infuse 3, so that you can in fact infuse off creatures that die and cards that were discarded off the first part of the spell. This is very interesting. It's like a board wipe. It can make a token. You can make both players discard 3 cards. That seems hard to break the symmetry on. I think it's quite a powerful card that's just going to be overshadowed by Nightfall. Nightfall is just so powerful that I don't think you have a reason to run this. Black's also getting a very excellent 3 mana Planeswalker in Sorin, Errant Bloodlord. One black for his 3 loyalty Planeswalker that has a +2. +2s on 3 mana Planeswalkers are always very relevant. The +2 makes a creature you control gorge, so you could rummage or sack a creature to draw a card. Um, Sorin protects himself. You can -2 to make a 2/2 with flying and lifelink. And the ultimate, which you get you pretty fast, it's a -8, and with the +2, you come in with 5 loyalty. Next turn 7, next turn 9, next turn ultimate. Deal X damage divided among any number of targets that you gain X life, where X is the number of cards in your graveyard. So that's a fine ultimate. But what you're really here for is just like making a 2/2 flying lifelink every other turn, and potentially rummaging and sacking creatures to get +1/+1 counters. Um, Looks properly strong. 3 mana Planeswalker is always scary, and this one seems to have all the numbers you want. I guess it doesn't interact with your opponent at all, except with the ultimate, is the main thing counting against Sorin. Moving on to red. Red aggro has seen some signs of life in Worlds, but is generally hasn't been in the greatest spot recently. But it's getting some real hits. Starting off down at the 1 drops, we got Covetous Neonate, 1 mana 1/1 Vampire Rogue. But if there's an instant sorcery or vampire in your graveyard, it's a 1 mana 2/1 haste. And no matter what, it dies into a blood token. This is just an incredibly pushed 1 drop. It's not hard to have an instant sorcery or vampire in your graveyard. I mean, this is a vampire. The other 1 drop we're talking about is a vampire. You're going to be playing instants and sorcery, especially if this kind of tokens deck where you play your Raise the Alarm on turn 2. Oh, I forgot about a Sibros card. Right, we're losing one of our Raise the Alarms in freaking what's it called? Ragtag Squad. It's okay. We have 5 million Raise the Alarms. You'll be fine. Yeah, Covetous Neonate gonna very quickly become a 1 mana 2/1 that dies into a permanent. Probably good if there's a red kind of Aristocrat shell, just 1 mana card dies to a permanent. Good in generic aggro decks that happen to include instants and sorceries. Good in decks that want to fill their graveyard, just good in general. But probably not as good as a Woken Heir. 1 mana 1/2 menace. Whenever another creature you control enters, it gets +1/+0 until end turn. I mentioned the Chapel Crasher that gets bigger whenever you play creatures. This is like that, except it has menace. Good lord. This is going to attack as a 2/2 menace pretty reliably, 3/2 menace sometimes, and even has an activated ability, 4 mana to make a 1/1 with haste. That's instant speed, so you can use that to chump block if you need to. You can Threat of Activation that to make this thing's attacks better. I think this is our new best red 1 drop by a decent margin, and I think Covetous Neonate is second. These are both very pushed 1 drops. Going to 2, the hit 2. It's still Sunshine, because Ash Elven Pyromaniac is a 2 mana 3/1, and when it dies, you get a 1/1 Devil that dies into deal 1 damage, or an enchantment token that you can sack to give a creature +1/+0 in haste, instant speed, by the way, or a treasure token. So this is just gonna get you whatever thing you need. Probably the Devil's your default option, and 2 mana 3/1 that dies into a Devil is just a great deal off the bat. But if you have a powerful card in your hand that you'd like to give haste, you can get the enchantment. And if you got an expensive card that you don't have the land for, you get a treasure. I mean, it's all upside. It's all good. I see this seeing wide play in just every red creature deck, basically every red deck that's not Jeskai control. And humbler, but still potentially playable. Disgruntled Crook is 1 red for a 2/2, and when it enters, it deals 2 damage to a player or planeswalker. Yep, not exciting, but enables your spectacle and could definitely be a thing in a pretty no-nonsense, get-em-dead red aggro deck. Going to 3 mana. Now, of course, at 3 mana, we had a lot of competition already. Fabricating Anomaly, one of the best cards in the format, was a 3 mana red creature, but you can play multiple 3 mana red creatures if you really need to. Competitive Hedonist was also starting to see play. But if you're looking for 3 mana 3/3 haste, I think Competitive Hedonist is going to be replaced by Brazen Burglar. 2 red's 3/3 haste, players can't gain life, and whenever a creature an opponent controls leaves the battlefield, the Burglar deals 1 damage to that opponent. This is just a very powerful 3 mana 3/3 haste, punishes them for doing all sorts of things they want to do. Good against control because it stops their life gain, good against mid-range and aggro because it punishes them for trading off their creatures. Just strong. Yeah, I said probably replaces Hedonist. The other contender for the 3 mana 3 power haste slot in red is Profane Invoker. 3 mana 3/2 haste. When it enters or transforms into Profane Invoker, you can discard your hand to draw 2 cards, Werewolf ability, and it flips into a creature that's a 4/3, and whenever it attacks, you can cast an instant or sorcery, mana value 2 or less from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. You have to be really super low curve to want this. Like, you have to, if you're not reliably using the discard your hand to draw 2 cards the turn you play this, um, then I don't think you want it. But if you're that low curve, this is definitely a decent amount of value, and you just want to have some cheap burn spells, presumably to point at your opponent's face. Up at 4, red 4 up, especially with Ardra leaving, didn't have nearly as much competition. Precursor to Calamity was a commonly seen one, but I think our new best red 4 up is definitely Sunset Champion. 2 red, 5/4 trample. Whenever it enters or attacks, you exile the top 2 cards of your library. You can play one of them until the end of your next turn, and creatures cost 1 less to cast. 4 5/4. This is better than draw a card. Until the end of your next turn, and you get selection, and you get discounts. 4 5/4 is that better than draw cards on enter or attacks. I mean, it's pushed. You're going to play this. You're going to see this all over the place. Mid-range, aggro, all decks want this. Up at 5, the red 5 reps were also kind of lacking. You saw me get kind of disappointed with Eva Viva in Worlds. Well, we got 2 options. Reckless Show for this 4 mana 4/4 Flying Haste. Sorry, 5 mana 4/4 Flying Haste. We actually just didn't have that stat line prior to this. And it's Spectacles for 3 red, but if its spectacle cost was paid, it deals 4 damage to a creature or planeswalker. Mostly you're playing this if you want 5 mana 4/4 Flying Haste because you're an aggro deck and you want your 5-drop to deal damage to them immediately. Feudrak of Ashmouth is 2 red for a 5/5 flyer. It gets 1 to red to give a creature ++0 itself or another creature, and whenever you attack, it deals X damage to any target. X is the difference between target creature controls power and base power. So if you're a deck that reliably puts counters on things, it's a little slow. Like if your board's empty, this doesn't do anything the turn it comes down, which is a big deal. If you play this and they kill it pre-combat, it does nothing. But if you do manage to be fighting a fair game and you've got a creature with a bunch of counters on it, either +1 or -1 counters, or you manage to target one of your creatures with Face of Animosity, then this can swing in for a really huge amount of damage. Like if you Face of Animosity it becomes an 8 and it also deals 3, so that's 11 damage. Could be something. Also a dragon, that's not an irrelevant type. Red's got some burn spells, so we were really struggling for a 1 mana burn spells going into this set. Shock was the most widely played 1 mana burn spell. I guess Terminal Impact was the most widely played 1 mana burn spell. But of like the ones that actually cost 1, Shock. And you know what? There's room for better cards than Shock, and here we're getting 3 of them. We're getting Strangle, 1 mana sorcery, 3 damage to a creature or planeswalker. We're getting strictly better Strangle. It's Strangle, but if you have 2 savage creatures as flash, it's not strictly better by much, but it is strictly better. We're getting Blade Flourish, which is Shock, but excess damage dealt to creatures or planeswalkers goes to their controller. Yeah, I think by default you play Full Moon Assault as your 1 mana burn spell of choice going forward. If you don't want Full Moon Assault, you can play, if for some reason you need the ability to go face with your 1 mana burn spell, you play Blade Flourish instead. Just a pretty clean swap, gonna up the power of red decks and really make up for the loss of Terminal Impact. Up at 2 mana, we have Claret Ascendance, 2 mana, sorcery, 3 damage to any target, so it can go face, and it exiles permanents it kills. And for 4 mana, you can exile it from your graveyard to make a creature gorge at a sorcery speed. We have so many 2 mana sorceries that deal 3 damage in this format, just an unbelievable number. We got red-white ones. I got that one nerfed. We got red-blue ones, and is it just red-blue? It might just be red-blue. We got mono-red ones, too. I think Claret Ascendance probably worse than Bleeding Out if you can afford double red, and if you're looking for and if you don't really care about the face damage, you play Frag instead, because 4 damage is going to be a lot more than 3 damage, I think, going forward. But if you care about the Gorge, and you need your Bird Pill to go face, and you care about exiling things, I think the stars could easily align where Claret Ascendance is your Lightning Strike of choice. It's certainly up there. Red is getting 2 incredibly powerful board wipes in this rotation. Burn it all down, 1 red, 3 damage to each creature and each planeswalker. Until in turn permanents dying don't cause abilities to trigger. So once again, hosing that Aristocrats deck. And there's some powerful... So what this enables is... This means you can play blue-red control or teamer control and actually have access to a 3 mana sweeper. I think on its face is actually stronger than Coup d'etat or Deafening Clarion if you can afford the double red, because this actually because the hosing Aristocrats deck is, I think, more important than the upsides on Coup d'etat or Deafening Clarion. So if you're straight red-white control, straight blue-red control, straight black-red control, and you can afford the double red, I think this becomes your sweeper of choice. I think you can even see this out of mid-range decks just as a sideboard card against aggro and aristocrats. That seems super possible. Olivia's Debauchery, though, might be even stronger. X and a red, deal X damage to each creature and each planeswalker. 3 mana for 2 damage, 4 mana for 3, 5 mana for 4. These are all pretty reasonable numbers. Usually this effect costs X red red, so getting it for just X and a red is a big deal. And oh, it has another option. You can make X dark creatures you control Gorge. Um, that option is less powerful, but it might come up sometimes if you just need to loot away your hand, or sack creatures to draw cards. But really, I think this kind of slots right in where Terminal Impact left. X and a red spell goes in your control decks, and it's just a flexible sweeper. The 2 mana mode is going to be relevant against some decks as well. Super powerful, I think, and especially for stuff like Jeskai control. Moving on to green. The green 1-drop of choice is, of course, Huskforger Acolyte, but if you're looking for something a bit more defensive, you could play Shroud Piercer. 1 mana 1/1 Death Touch. When it enters Surveil 2, 2 and a green, exile from your graveyard, Surveil 2. Just a very annoying speed bump against creature decks. Surveil 2 means it's doing something. Yeah, if you're looking for a 1-drop in your kind of slower green mid-range deck, it's a great option. Also, with Death Touch is Winding Assailant, so there wasn't really a consensus best green 2-drop. I guess Blightstalker is the option, but that's mostly played for like sideboard and synergy reasons. There's the 2 mana dork, but not every deck needs a mana dork. There's the Valiant one, Insurgent Sleeper Insurgent from Queens of Nylon, but that needs to be doing Valiant stuff. So Winding Assailant is probably in the conversation at least. This is a pursuit one. 2 mana 2/2 Death Touch, and you can pursuit it for 4 green green to get 3 2/2s with Death Touch. 3 2/2s with Death Touch is not bad. And so if you're kind of a graveyard sacrificey type of deck, you can certainly see this becoming your new 2-drop of choice. But the real slot that matters for green is 3 drops. Because of Huskforger Acolyte, but also because of Revolt of the Palace and Foes Unfed and Foreign Encounter. Lots of reasons to want a lot of good 3-drops in your green decks. Redeemer of Hollow Flesh and Faithline Marshal were 2 of our better value options before. We're getting a new one. Runstalker Maiden, 1 green green, 2/1 Human Peasant, comes with a 2/2. So 3 mana, 2/1 plus 2/2, that's good stats. And you can cast creature spells with Flash by tapping an untapped creature you control. Yeah, I think this is just probably, if you're a Flash deck, you don't want this because your cards already have Flash, but if you're just kind of a generic green creature deck that needs a second good 3-drop after Redeemer, this is probably your next best option. Wayland Bloodhunter is a 4 mana 4/4 haste. By the way, there's a ton of haste in this set. You're going to see so many haste creatures. We already saw a bunch of great haste creatures in red. There's going to be more. 4 mana 4/4 haste. Can't be blocked by more than one creature. And you can pay a black as a sorcery to put a bounty counter on a creature. It gains when this dies, you draw a card and gain 2 life. And Wayland has to be blocked by a creature with a bounty counter. So the play pattern here is pretty obvious. You have Wayland, and as long as Wayland's on the board, your opponent just can't play creatures that are 3/4 or smaller, or else you'll just put a bounty counter on them and immediately kill them. I put this in the green section, not the green-black section, because honestly, I think you can just put this card in a deck that can't even generate black mana, or can't generate it that well. Just with 4 mana 4 haste, it's not a stat line we had before. And it has some interesting kind of evasion, you can't be double blocked. You can also, it's only a black mana, it's not once per turn. You could just throw bounty getters at all your opponent's creatures, just for when they die to normal removal and board wipes. Just seems like an incredible value engine and damage source, and impeccably dressed. So just nothing left to love about Wayland Bloodhunter. Another 4-drop, if you're looking for more of a hateful 4-drop, Esteemed Exterminator is 2 green green, 5/5, uncounterable, hexproof from instants, can't be blocked with creatures power 2 or less. Now, basically all the spells, like more than half of the spells you would be using to kill a 5/5 are instants. Hang, Sovereign's Execution, Fateful Ascent. Basically the only things that kills this reliably are the hard board wipes, so the 4 mana board wipe that we're just getting. But it's too big for Nightfall. It's too big for all of the red burn spells, and the 1 red bristle that's big enough, which is electronic countermeasures. That's an instant. So really, the only ways to kill this are the hard board wipes and the white hard board wipes and what's its name, The enchantments. Oh yeah. The Oblivion Ring, the Oblivion Ring enchantments, and the Oblivion Ring battle. So Gone Pickin', um, the Orbital Vacuum, Clash at Oblivion Ring, uh, Sanctum of Repression. Those are your main ways of killing this. But this dodges a lot of removal, and if they're not playing exactly white, I don't think they can ever kill this. Which seems pretty good, and it has some evasion. This is going to be your new best kind of control killer 4-drop. Going up to 5, our best 5-drop going into this was a Roar Buffer Exec. That's kind of a ramp specific card, although it's quite good at that role. We're getting 2 options. If you're more on the value side, you get Prying Hydra, 5 on a 5 on not 5 on a reach, power and toughness, each equal number of cards in your hand. Whenever it enters or attacks, you can sack a non-eye creature. If you do, you draw X cards and gain X life, for X is that creature's toughness. You can just sack your, I don't know, Redeemer of Hollowed Flesh and draw 3, gain 3. You can sack your Huskforge Dracolite, draw 5, gain 5. That seems not a great way to kill your opponent, but a great way to kind of pull ahead in value. If you're more on the aggro side, kind of assertive side, you can take Estwald Brigands, 5 on a 5/5 haste. Whenever it enters, you get to have another one of your creatures bite one of their creatures, so that can get a blocker out of the way. Especially good if those Death Touch creatures we saw earlier. It has a backside too, but come on, it's a 5-drop. It needs to do something right now, so the backside doesn't super matter. So yeah, these are your 5-drops now. If you're more ramped, play Roar. You're more value, play Hydra. If you're more kind of assertive but still want a 5-drop, you play Brigands. And finishing up green, there's not a lot of non-creature cards I want to talk about, but there is 2 important sideboard cards. If you're looking for a artifact enchantment answer out of your sideboard and green decks, previously your best answer was something like Masksmith, which was powerful but a little slow. Now you get Pick Your Poison, Cannon Reprint, single green mana for a sorcery. Each opponent sacrifices an artifact, or they sack an enchantment, or they sack a creature of flying. Lots of artifacts, enchantments, and/or creatures of flying running around right now, so I think this is a very reliable sideboard card. If you wanted a hexproof trick, our previous best option was Eternal Struggle. Eternal Struggle is 1 mana, that certainly matters a lot, but Griffin's Blessing has 2 main modes. 1 green instant, put a +1/+1 counter on a creature and it fights one of your opponent's creatures, or +1/+1 counter and hexproof. So the split between those 2 options, the fight spell is pretty efficient. 2 mana, instant speed, +1/+1 counter, and fight. That's a really good fight spell. Although, fight spells always have trouble in constructed, but it also has the option of hexproof, and you can make your opponent sack an artifact if you don't need some part of one of those. This seems like a very powerful sideboard card if your opponent has either not a lot of ways to interact with your creature, so the fight spell is good, or a lot of ways to interact with your creature, so the hexproof is good, or artifacts. Probably if your opponent satisfied 2 of those conditions, then you'll bring this in. Moving on to gold. I'm going to go through color pair by color pair, starting with blue-white. Desperate Exorcism is a very strong bounce spell. So you have to bounce one of your own spells or non-land permanents, but you get to bounce one of your opponent's spells or non-land permanents, and the spell or non-land permanent of your opponents that you bounce costs 2 more forever. So you're always going to get your tempo on this. It can even bounce spells. Basically, in order to play this, you need to have non-land permanents of your own that you want to bounce. So battles with enter triggers, enchantments with enter triggers, creatures with enter triggers. We got tons of those. If you can put enough of them in your deck, the Desperate Exorcism will be just an extremely excellent bounce spell. That 2-mana attack is just going to be utterly crippling. Yeah, I have Preemption Demon here, which is like with our previous bounce a spell or non-land permanent. But that one made the card cost 3 exactly instead of 2 more, so it's way nicer than Desperate Exorcism. Traft Aiding the Worthy is a 4-mana 3/3 with Ward 2, and whenever it attacks, you get a 4/4 tapped and attacking angel, exile at end of combat, and it has Possess, and it gives the enchanted creature the Ward 2 and the attack trigger. This 3 toughness on a 4-drop, even with Ward 2, is a little rough. It means this dies to all the 3 damage board wipes, which is pretty rough. But in a kind of white-blue tokens deck, all the white-blue tokens cards like Okina Aether Song Basker from Kitso Dusk of Time, they've always been decently strong. They've never fully had a home. Traft could maybe fit into that. It does certainly attack for 7 on its own, and it does something when it dies, so it's got the juice, even though I don't think it's perfectly positioned. Some colors that only have a couple cards. Aratal, Grand Adjudicator, is a 5-mana Orzhov 5/5 with flying and lifelink. We don't really have a giant flying lifelink creature in Orzhov right now, so you could play this if you just need that. And when they enter, No pronoun specified. When they enter, you can sacrifice any number of creatures to draw that many cards, and then you can put a +1/+1 counter on, and then all the creatures you didn't sacrifice get +1/+1 counters. Mostly kind of a top end for a deck that has like a go wide, lots of creatures. Pretty good in that role. Obviously, Black White is kind of a sacrifice aristocrats deck in Valir, and it's probably better in there. But I think it's just a generically good 5-drop in any white black deck that has a lot of creatures. Smolder Away is 1 black red for an enchantment. Uh, your end step, you can exile 2 cards from your graveyard to drain your opponent for 2. Your upkeep, you can exile 2 cards from your graveyard to draw a card and lose 2 life. I think if you're a black-red control deck that fills your graveyard a lot, like a Grixis control deck, for instance, this is a good choice for your card advantage engine. Drains your opponent, and can either gain you life or kill your opponent or draw cards depending on how you want to spend your graveyard. The fact that this does nothing while there's the Crucible of the Burning Sun in play is really rough. But if this is kind of your only way to use your graveyard, you might be able to get away with it. It does certainly eat your graveyard very, very fast, so you gotta have ways to fill it. Wanton Destruction, 6 mana, Golgari sorcery. Each player sacks all their online permanents, and you get to regrowth 1 of the permanents sacrificed this way. Could maybe see this in some kind of Sultai control, where it fully resets the board and you have like little dinky permanents you want to recur. Little expensive, but could see something. Red Green gets Huntmaster of the Fells, Cannon Reprint, 4 mana for 2 2/2s, and you gain 2 life. And Werewolf abilities into a 4/4 that deals 2 damage to your opponent and one of their things. You get the 2/2 whenever it transfers back. I think this is probably a little small ball, especially since like your mid-range decks are going to be living in fear of the 3 damage sweepers. There's so many of them, and control decks are going to be playing them very widely. And so 4 mana for 2 2/2s is exactly not the stat line you want on your 4-drop. But it's cool. It's cool, and it certainly will do things in more of a kind of grindy mid-range matchup. Memoriam is a 4 mana card draw spell, 2 blue-black, instant. You mill 4 cards, and then you bring 2 non-creature non-land cards, not just among the milled cards, any in your graveyard, back to your hand. You exile Memoriam. Main competition for this slot is Nether Invocation, which is the one from Solitaire that's either 4 mana draw 2 cards, or you can draw a card and deal damage and gain life, equal number of cards in your hand. I think Nether Invocation probably the flexibility earns it the main deck slot more often, although Memoriam's a very strong card advantage spell if you just want a straight up 4 mana card advantage option. Blue-red. Blue-red gets another excellent Lightning Strike. Blue-red already had 2 good Lightning Strikes. Lunar Awe, the one which turned off abilities, and Ancestral Charm, the one that could also counter non-creature permanents. We're getting another one. This is Unstable Experimentation. You draw a card, and then you can either discard a card to deal 3 damage to any target, or you can Surveil 1. So, this is just very flexible. Baseline case of draw a card, discard a card, deal 3 to any target is really strong. That's like a very effective card filtering on your removal spell. And it fills your graveyard, and it's draw 2 for your looters deck, and it has the buyout option of just draw and surveil, so there's nothing good to bolt. Yeah, I think you might have like meta-specific reasons to want Lunar Awe or Ancestral Charm, but if you don't have any specific reason and you're fine with sorcery, I think Unstable Experimentation is your new best Izzet Lightning Strike variant, if you want one. Greedy Deserter is 3 mana for a 3/2 in Izzet. When it enters, you get to impulse draw a card until end of your next turn, and you can spectacle it for X blue-red, and then you get X cards instead. Kind of a spectacle thing, but the baseline of 3 mana 3/2 draw a card is close enough that this could see some usage out of kind of just fair mid-range blue-red decks. Probably Teamer or Jeskai or something. But moving into blue-green, man, blue-green got the hookup. I think most exciting is the Setral Shaper. Now, I put Eager Scavenger in a deck, and I was happy about it. That's a 2 mana 2/2 with Landfall Surveil 2. Setral Shaper is 2 mana 2/3 Landfall Surveil 1, and it gets a loyalty count. He gets a loyalty counter. And for 1 in a blue, he transitions into Junie, Shaper Unbound. She's a legendary planeswalker. She's actually the woman, not the tree, even though she's named Juniper. Don't get confused. She has +1 surveil when draw a card. So 4 mana planeswalker, only 1 literally to start out, but plus abilities that draw the card. That's huge. And 0 to stun down a non-land permanent, and -2 to make a giant elemental. It's equal number of lands you control. And if you're ancient, you get 2 abilities a turn. You don't even got to be enabling ancient that hard to want this. The front side's great. The back side is very good at 4 mana. Yeah, this is a new, very good reason to be a blue-green regular mid-range deck. Um, Also on 2 mana, Teeming Secrets is a great card. 2 mana, Simic Instant. You can look at the top 3 cards of your library, either get a land onto the battlefield tapped from among them, or you get one of them into your hand. So it's just instant speed, rampant growth for 2 mana. Or if you don't need the land, you can get a card into your hand. This is excellent. I think if you're blue green and you want to ramp even at all, you can just play this card and it's excellent. Not much else to say. There's also Voice of the Old Grove, kind of a bristly bill variant. Blue green 1/1 vigilance. Landfall, put a +1/+1 counter on a creature. And if you're ancient, you get 4 counters instead. I'm putting it in this section rather than the ancient section because I think even if you're not trying to enable ancient that hard, Bristly Bill is just a good baseline rate. We got a ton of fetch lands in the format right now, so getting 2 landfall triggers in a turn is very achievable. But the real color that got the hookup is Boros. So in Netrunner they have a term called Reg. So if you're playing Reg Anarch, that means you're playing the Anarch faction, and you're playing just all the generically best Anarch cards, irrespective of synergy. Anyways, I think Reg Boros, which just plays the good Boros creatures all the way up the curve, is going to be a great deck going into the new rotation. We already looked at some great white and red creatures, but we also have another great 1-drop in Via the First Hero, 1 mana 2/1, Mustard to get a loyalty counter and first strike until end of turn, and 2 mana to get a loyalty counter and transformer into a planeswalker, with Mustard to get a loyalty counter still, 0 to blink 1 of your creatures, -2 to bolt something, -3 to impulse draw 3 cards. Yeah, just a good 1-drop, and the Planeswalker does a lot of very useful things, and I think your opponent's going to be kind of loath to spend a real removal spell on your 1-drop, so you might actually get up to a decent amount of loyalty before you get to transform Vi. Up at 2 mana, you could play Silverflame Zealot. More of a sideboard card here, 2 mana 2/2. When it enters, you get to Polyvito Domidarosa your opponent, and your opponent gets to Polyvito Domidarosa you. Also has Fire Breathing, effectively. 2 mana 2/2 Fire Breathing. If you're really worried about like combo cards or sweepers, you can play this, and your Polyvito Domidarosa will be better than your opponent's Polyvito Domidarosa. Also on 2 mana, Rally the Rabble. 2 mana enchantment with Mustard, Impulse, draw a card. It's only during your next turn. It's not until the end of your next turn. It's only during your next turn. But still, that counts as actually drawing a card. 2 mana enchantment to draw the card whenever you cast a creature spell is just nuts. This thing's gonna really fuel your kind of Reg Boros deck and allow it to continue fighting through removal and board wipes very effectively. Just a nightmare card for any kind of interactive deck. Up at 3 mana, you get Valiant Firebrand. 3 mana, 4/3. Creature tokens can't block. Whenever you attack, you can rummage, and when you discard a creature card, you can cast it from your graveyard. Man, the hits just keep coming. 3 mana, 4/3, evasion and card filtering and card advantage. This is your new. I think if you're Reg Boros, you're probably playing Fabricated Anomaly and Valiant Firebrand, and those are the first 2 3-drops in the deck, and maybe you want another 3-drop, or maybe you don't. You do kind of want a low curve to trigger all your Mustard stuff. Another great 3-drop that I think is just not going to see play because it's not as good as the other busted 3-drops. Sara Siege Captain. 3 mana, X4, X is number non-token creatures you control, and whenever it attacks, you can cast a creature spell, mana value 2 or less from your hand. So could top out your curve, could maybe see play. It's going to be quite large. It's going to get you card advantage. You're not always going to have 2 drops in hand by the time this is attacking, but it's like, completely very strong card. It's just got so many 3-drops. Here's another one. Golden Light Purgeblade. 1 red, white, 2/1 flash flying. When it enters, you can deal 4 damage to a creature that enters this turn, or exile an artifact or enchantment that enters this turn. So, essentially, 3 mana, 2/1 flash flying, counter a creature, artifact, or enchantment spell? Seems great to me. More of a card for your reactive deck. But what are they going to do? Play around it by not casting any spells? Probably a sideboard card, but you bring it into like the mid-range matchup, and it's going to really ruin their day. Up at 4 mana, Elgod Dawnrider, 4 mana 3/3 lifelink haste. Whenever it attacks, you get a 1/1 human tap and attacking, or you can give your attacking creatures +1/+0. Or if you have 4 or more um, creatures, so that includes Dawnrider and the 1/1 human he just made. So 2 other creatures, you get the 1/1 and the Ansem. Once again, 3 toughness is very annoying. Um, the fact that Valiant Firebrand has 3 toughness is also annoying. 3 toughness is the magic number for all the removal in the format right now. But immediate value pumps your team. Really, other than 4 toughness, not much more you could ask for in a 4-drop out of your aggro deck. Yeah, just Boros aggro cards. I think you could make a good Boros aggro deck just out of cards from these 2 sets. In colorless, very short colorless section here. As I said, neither of these sets have an artifact theme. But we do have the Founder's Cage. 2 mana, legendary artifact, enters tap with 5 loyalty counters. You can tap it and remove a loyalty counter from it or any other permanent you control to either add a mana of any color or put a loyalty counter on a planeswalker. So this is a colorless 2 mana mono rock that adds any color. So if you're a deck that plays a lot of colors and you have 4 drops you want to play, I think you just play this even with no planeswalkers. And it's also pretty good with planeswalkers. 5 loyalty counters means this is not going to run out anytime soon. Yeah, this slots kind of into the same decks that wanted to play, what was it, Layshard before. Especially because we have a 4 mana sweeper now. So you could be a control deck that just, like, you could be like, Jeskai control. I'm going to run this out on turn 2. Turns 3, hard board wipe. That seems like a perfectly reasonable plan. We're getting two kind of sideboardy artifacts. Memorial of the First Shaper, the 2 mana artifact that counters enter triggers unless their controller pays 2. Only from non-land permanents, thank goodness. Yeah, there's a ton of enter triggers in the form right now. I think this is a quite effective sideboard card into a large variety of different decks. Gonna really shut down stuff like Karav's Monument. Gonna really shut down a lot of tokens decks. Gonna really annoy certain control decks. I guess the hard part is just you got to make sure that this doesn't punish you by accident because there's a lot of. It's gonna be hard to build a deck where this doesn't affect any of your own cards. There's also unmarked headstones. 0 mana artifact, it exiles a card from a graveyard when it enters, 2 sack it, draw a card, and 1 exile from a graveyard to exile another target card. This is a reasonable, kind of very cheap graveyard hate card. I think if you're looking for a sideboard graveyard hate option, you probably just play Crucible or Archival Storage or Faces instead of this. But this does have a very important interaction, which is it's our only 0 mana artifact for Venture Capitalist. So this lets you play Venture Capitalist on 2, get this, and just sack it on turn 3 to play a 4-drop, which is a relevant line, which means that you will put one of these in all your Venture Capitalist decks. Okay, it's worth talking about Graveyard Hate because there's so many Graveyard themes in this set. We do have a lot of good Graveyard Hate. If you're trying to turn off abilities in your opponent's graveyard, or stop them from getting stuff back from their graveyard, or stop them from filling their graveyard further. Crucible of the Burning Sun, Archival Storage, Faces of the Faceless. What we don't have is ways to, like, exile your opponent's graveyard effectively. There's Helia Latespire, but that's 3 mana and it's white. So all of the stuff that's like the number of X in your graveyard, that's actually really hard to turn off. Like, if you want to get your opponent off Ancient, or there's also, like, number of instant sorceries in your graveyard matters in some of these cards, there's actually just not a great way of doing that other than Helia Latespire. So that's something we're going to have to watch out for, is, like, the graveyard hate texture. Okay, let's talk some synergy packages. I'm going to start with packages that already exist that are getting new cards, and then we're going to go on to packages that are brand new. Starting with Looters. Looters is a deck that makes use of cheap creatures that kind of draw and then discard cards, or discard and then draw cards, and then combines that with stuff that cares about drawing 2 cards in a turn, casting 2 spells in a turn, having cards in your graveyard. And it's getting some good stuff. It's getting a new Great Removal Spell, Unstable Experimentation. Already mentioned this one. It's a removal spell that loots, so obviously Looter is going to be super happy with it. We're getting 2 new creatures that loot. Greedy Duelist, the 1 mana 1/1 Vampire Soldier. Whenever it attacks, you can pay 2 life to have it gorge, and you can bring it from your graveyard to your hand for 2 and a black. So if you're willing to eat the life loss, this can just grow and rummage every time it attacks. And a Looter's deck is actually especially well equipped to take advantage of this because disadvantage of gorging a bunch is you're going to discard all your non-land cards and you're going to draw a bunch of land cards that you don't want. But with a Looter's deck, you can use your other Looters to then discard the land cards and get non-land cards back instead. Um, and this will just grow very quickly and efficiently as long as you're willing to pay that life. And you can discard this uh, to your stuff so you can get it back. Great card for the Looter's deck, although it does mean you have to be black. Looter's is traditionally a blue-red deck, but its color requirements are not that stringent. You could easily splash into black for this. Leowin Escape Artist is a 2-mana 1/3 with Skulk. When it hits your opponent, it loots. And you can play red to transform her into a Planeswalker as usual. Planeswalker side gives your creature Skulk, +1 to give a creature +1/+0, other creature -1/+0. Also +1 to loot, also -2 to exile cards from your graveyard and deal that much damage to a non-player target. Yeah, 2-mana Looter is a lot worse than 1-mana Looter. We do already have Greedy Duelist and Ignited Soul for 2 1-mana Looters, but there is some definite potential here. The Planeswalker gives you some much needed interaction, and the Skulk is very nice for all your small creatures. And the Looter's deck is traditionally a very low curve deck, so it can take advantage of all the cards it's drawing, and also to be able to double spell for things like Research Grant. But if you're willing to go all the way up to 3, you can play Fabricated Anomaly. But if you want to play another 3-up in addition to Fabricated Anomaly, you can play Marl, Vicar O'Head. Blue-red hybrid for a 3/2 rogue. If you would draw one or more cards, except the first one you draw on your draw step, you draw that many cards +1 instead. And if another source you control would deal damage, it deals that damage +1. So it makes all of your small creatures 1 damage bigger. Like your Ignited Soul now deals 2 to them, or 2 to creatures, or 2 to the creatures that block it. Your burn spells deal an additional 1 damage. Looters often transitions into becoming a burn deck later in the game once its Looters can no longer get in. And all of your Looters are now card advantage. When you hit your opponent with Ignited Soul, you get to discard a card and then draw 2 cards. When you hit your opponent with Leowin or attack with Greedy Duelist, or cast Unstable Experimentation, or if you're on Stargazing, whenever you cast Stargazing, you just get to go up an additional card. I mean, that first ability is just tailor-made to work in Looters. And I think it's worth going all the way up to 3. Even though this is a 3-mana 3/2, you can get so much value off this immediately. Just turn 1 Looter, turn 2 Looter, turn 3 play this, your Looters now draw you 2 additional cards, and they do 2 additional damage. At that point, you don't even mind if she dies. Tokens, often white-green tokens, sometimes Naiad tokens, is a deck that's been reasonably successful for a while off the back of Kitsune Matriarch, and also often survives in the New World and Consume the Divine as big token payoffs. And it's getting some cards. Congregation Minister, 2-mana 1/3, when it enters make an 0/1, 0/1 Acolyte. It's another 2-mana for 2 bodies card, probably worse than the ones that have 2 total power, but it is a lot of toughness, so it could see play, especially if you're heavier into white and you need all your stuff to be white. Forsaken Penitence is a 2-mana 1/2, and whenever a token you control enters, you get an Acolyte token, only once each turn. This is just great. It double triggers your Kitsune Matriarch because it's a trigger on your token making. You could easily get this to go off every turn, especially with stuff like Freedom, the backside of Sparks of Revolution. Just an excellent auto include for all your tokens Consume the Divine nonsense decks. At 3 mana, you got Ascension Ritualist. 3 mana 2/2 first strike, but whenever it attacks, you can sack another creature to surveil 1 and put a +1 counter on each of your creatures. I think this is probably a little too fragile. At 3 mana, 2 toughness, does nothing the turn it enters. But if you're going really wide, this can kind of do a similar thing to Harmony, in that it can kind of convert your board into just huge advantage against other kind of creature decks. And up at 4 mana, there's War Forge Master. 4 mana 2/2 makes 2 weapon tokens. You can attach them as you want, so 4 mana 4/4 baseline. Vigilance, and gives your first spell each turn affinity for tokens. That could potentially be a really big discount. These decks easily get 4 or 5 tokens on the board pretty reliably. I don't know what giant spell you're discounting with this. Maybe it's a big complementarity? That seems a little sketchy. Complementarity is an instant, though, so you can go Warforged Master with 5 mana, Warforged Master, then on your opponent's turn, you can Complementarity for a huge number. Maybe there's something there. I think the real big payoff for tokens is Forsaken Penitence, but that's really more than enough for them. Unearths. We have a lot of unearths in Rev right now, and they're having some decks that try to take advantage of those unearths. Um, Often they like there's the battle one, there's the one that gives an exalted counter, there's the one that gives a +1/+1 counter. There's March of the Long Night that gives it Death Touch and Haste. Um, and we are getting two very important unearths. Become the Hunted is an unearth with Pursuit. That's nice, but the real big payoff is Consult the Offerings. 1 mana sorcery, exile creature card from out of these 3 left from your graveyard, and you can cast a copy without paying its mana cost. It does undertapped, but 1 mana unearth really turns this deck up to the next level. The big question is, what are the 3 drops you're getting back with this? Soya Now Executioner seems like a great option, considering it's a very powerful 3 drop, and it cares about discarding cards, which is often the thing you're going to be doing to put stuff in your graveyard. Fabricated Anomaly is not only a great 3 drop, it also discards cards so you can unearth them. The previous unearth decks often made use of the weather creatures, Stratus Fledgling and Gloomy Meteorologist, because those are powerful 3 drops that you kind of want to get over and over again. Yeah. Unearths the deck once again. One thing you're going to be seeing as we go through these packages, so many of them are graveyard focused. Graveyard hate is going to be such an important part of the meta going forward. Even the second tier kind of niche graveyard hate cards like Graceful Finalizer might become important. Green red +1/+1 counters in the decks that saw some play like about a year ago and then kind of fell off the map. It's getting 2 very important new cards. Dark-Sicked Howler, the 2 mana 2/3 mana dork, and you pay 1 and tap it to give a savage creature Curiosity for the turn, only the sorcery. So if you're putting +1/+1 counters on your creatures, this is a mana dork that late game can convert into a card draw engine. That's great. Lunar Blind Packmaster is 1 red. It's got flash, and enters tapped. It deals 2 damage to any target, and it can't attack or block unless you attack or block with another savage creature. Unfortunately, if you put the +1 counter on this with something like foreign encounter, that doesn't work. It has to be this and another creature with a +1/+1 counter on it. The old mainstays of Calamity Cat, Kieran of Boons, foreign encounter, those are all still here and still good. So I can see this green red +1/+1 counters kind of being a synergy relevant kind of build around package. Kara's Monument is the deck that uses Kara's Monument with enchantments that make artifact tokens, so that's Gompick and Shigana Manor Burns and Darkstar Severance. Not getting much from this rotation, but it's getting 1 very important card. If you're not playing Evaviva, the mana requirements on Kara's Monument are not that bad, so you can put some colorless lands in your deck, such as Humming Furnace. And having a land that makes an artifact is always the tough type for Kara's Monument. You want more artifacts than enchantments in your Kara's Monument deck. And having a land that can trigger Kara's Monument just lets you get up to that density so much easier. I expect this to. I don't know if Kara's Monument is going to be the best thing going forward, but if it is, Humming Furnace is the big thing it gets. Iviana has been the tap-out control finisher of choice for a while now. She's always looking for new dragons. There's exactly 1 new dragon in these 2 sets. It's Feudrak. I don't think Iviana is that interested in Feudrak. It's a control deck. It doesn't have creatures with power granted as base power. And by the time you're casting a dragon of Iviana, you have access to at least 7 mana, so you don't really care about 5 drops. You really want like bigger things. So probably Iviana will be content with Gration and Azulio, and will have no need of Feudrak, and still be good. Okay, now it's time for the big one. So Aristocrats is already a very good deck off the back of Envoy of the Fallen. So Aristocrats is, cheap creatures and sacrifice. It's a deck that needs 3 things to work. You need cheap creatures, ways to sacrifice them, and ways to be paid off for sacrificing them. And what made Envoy of the Fallen so strong is that it was all 3 of those things in 1 card. And we're getting a ton of support for an Aristocrats deck. Starting with the sack fodders, 3 very good sack fodder 1-drops. Hollowhenge Martyr, 1 mana 0/1, dies into 1/1 spirit, and has possess, and the thing it possesses dies into 1/1 spirit. You can't possess the spirit it makes because of how the timing works, but if you have another creature on board, this is 3 bodies for 1 mana for all of your sack things. That's very, very good. Fledgling Sycophant is a 1 mana 1/1 white-black hybrid card. It's got flying, and it dives into an Acolyte token. Another 2 bodies for 1 card, but flying means is actually more relevant on the front side than something like Catch Constable. Sacrificial Lamb is probably the best of these 1 mana sack fodder cards. 1 mana 1/1, when it dies, you draw a card, and you can tap it to just sacrifice it. Yeah. Aristocrats does need to draw a lot of cards and has the ability to do so it can find all three pieces of the puzzle. And Sacrificial Lamb is going to be a big part of this card draw engine. Bedlam's Vessel I have on the slide was because I think it's cute. 4 mana 2/1 dies into a 5/5 flyer. Probably not for this Aristocrats deck, but cool anyways. Ways to sack creatures. We got Angel of Fading Dusk if you're going kind of a more mid-range, less combo-y Aristocrats deck. 4 mana 4/4 flyer. When it enters, you can sack another creature to drain your opponent for 3. And for 2 and a white, you can bring back creatures with mana value 2 or less with finality counters. Finality counters are really, really rough because every card in this deck has a death trigger, but just the enter helix them could be a pretty reasonable play. Siren Eternal Sentinel is a very important sack outlet. 2 and a white, 3/3 flyer. Whenever another creature you control dies, she gets a loyalty counter. And you can pay black to transform her into Siren Covetous Creation, which, crucially, is our second free repeatable sack outlet. You can sack a creature, surveil one, and put a loyalty counter on her. Only the sorcery, but this is joining Envoy of the Fallen as our only ways to freely sacrifice creatures. She also has abilities. -X to exile non-permanent mana value X, -2 to reanimate non-angel, non-spirit creature card, and 0 to make 2 fodder creatures, 2 acolytes. Yeah, the real question of Siren is, can you put her in the same deck as Envoy of the Fallen? Because that requires you to pay 4 colors, and the answer, I think, is yes. You just have to. You can't avoid playing the good white cards and the good and Envoy in the same deck. It's just too much power. Coffer's Altar is another sack outlet, a lot worse than Siren. 2 and a black artifact, you can tap sack a creature to either make a treasure or a card. If you sack a creature mana value 2 or greater, you get both. Kind of a fair sack outlet. So probably not going to see much play, especially if you have 2 good sack outlets in Siren and Envoy. What about ways to pay us off for sacrificing creatures? I'm glad you asked. We got Curse of Profane Offerings, which is Blood Artist on an enchantment. And for 4 and a black, you can make an 0/1 sheep. So yeah, just more Blood Artist effects, always what this deck is looking for. You currently only have like Smiling Sludge and you only have Smiling Sludge and the God's Laughter Demon, and now you have another one that's a lot cheaper, which is nice. Not cheaper, a lot harder to interact with. And Malicious Throng is a 3 mana 2/3 Vigilance. Whenever it or another non-token creature you control dies, create an Acolyte token. So this just kind of it's a force multiplier. It serves the same role that Serve Again sometimes served in these decks, where it kind of doubles up on all of your sacrificing stuff. Unlike Serve Again, it's actually a creature itself, which is the main reason to play it. Yeah, Aristocrats looks to be hugely well supported, probably 4 colors. Very scary deck. You're going to want to bring Graveyard Hate. Crucible of the Burning Sun is really, and Hylia Lacespire are important as the ones that actually stop creatures from dying and getting their die trigger. And you might even want Primordial Gateway as well. This deck seems strong. Goobers! Goobers is the deck that plays Gubernatorial Fundraiser and tries to get 3 of them in play. And then it casts card draw spells that cost 3, so it can spend 3 colors of mono them and make 3 treasure tokens and go infinite. It gets Done Deal. Done Deal costs 2 black as an instant. You draw 2 cards, lose 2 life, make 2 treasures. It can go mono positive with only 2 Goobers instead of 3. So Gubernatorial Fundraiser will play it and still probably not be that good. Reanimator is a relevant deck. Usually it's using Reclaim the Fallen to bring back Privilege Escalation. We got some contenders for that title. Curse of Disturbed Tombs is a 5 mana curse. You get to reanimate any creature, and whenever you attack, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on one of your attacking creatures and give it lifelink. It's 5 mana instead of the 4 mana flashback on Reclaim the Fallen, which is pretty rough. But it can give, if you're playing creatures, which you usually are, the lifelink is really nice. Giving lifelink to Privilege Escalation, of course, is really nice. Probably also the reanimation deck is not typically white these days; it's usually black-red. But Curse of Disturbed Tombs, it's definitely in the conversation here if you want to go into more of a black-white deck. There is that black-white adventure creature from Solitaire that is a reanimate. You could become more of a slower black-white reanimator deck, maybe. Another possible reanimation target is Het False God, 7 mana 7/7 flying lifelink, and whenever a non-token creature dies, including Het themselves, you can pay 3 life to get a token as a copy of it, except it's an 0/1 Warlock with 1 sack at Surveil 1. So, lifelink means aggro decks are not going to kill you through this very often. And the fact that it takes 2 removal spells to kill it is a big deal. You will... maybe not the greatest against control, because once it's an 0-1, they don't actually care about it that much. Although, you're playing other creatures in your reanimation deck, and having this on board makes it much more annoying for your opponent to deal with them. Yeah, I think Privilege Escalation probably slightly better, but the fact that Het takes 2 Ring Spells to kill makes it, I think, much better anti-control. And the lifelink might make it better against big aggro, maybe less good against mid-range decks that have, like, Oblivion Rings. But yeah, this card's very strong. Um, Ramp. So Aurora and Last Witch are 2 ramp cards that can generate obscene amounts of mana, and Last Witch especially. Sometimes you Last Witch and you have just a ton of mana, 11 or 12 mana, and you gotta get something good out of your sideboard with your 11 or 12 mana, and we didn't have a great option other than like Terminal Impact your opponent for an enormous number. Well, now we do. We have Emrakul, Village of Gore. 10 mana, 10/10, she, her pronouns. When you cast a spell, you can swap love titles to your opponent if you want. Flying, Menace, Hexproof from Instance and Flash. And beginning your end step, for each opponent lost life this turn, you can gain control of a permanent that player controls. To be honest, this is not like an overwhelmingly powerful Eldrazi. It's counterable. If your opponent has a high life total, it actually doesn't doom that much. Hexproof from Instance, as we saw on that green card, is a really relevant line of text on a big creature these days. So yeah, I think you put one of the way you will play Emrakul, you'll put one of them in the sideboard of your Last Wish deck, and sometimes you'll generate enough mana to cast it, and it'll be pretty good. There's a lot of kind of green-white bounce and blink your own creatures going around. Sanction Repression, Contest Coordinator, various other reprieve cards. Sheep Creatures of Enter triggers. Survivors of the New World is often part of that package. It's getting a new, quite good blink spell. Restoring Presence, X and a white instant, blink X of your creatures. It's slow blink, they come back at end step. And for 3 and a white, you can exile it from your graveyard and make a tap 3/4 with flying, instant speed. This is just that graveyard ability is pretty good. It's also an activated ability, so you can get this off Contest Coordinator. 3 mana, blink 2 creatures is probably decent value, and effectively it draws you this pretty decently statted flyer. Yeah. I think if you're going to be doing this kind of green-white value blink thing, this is going to be this probably merits inclusion. Green-blue flash, sometimes Sultai flash, sometimes Teamer flash, sometimes just green-blue. The deck really supported by a lot of Solitaire cards, especially Omen Mare and Interstellar Sage. It's getting 2 useful new cards. Subsuming Sludge is 1 blue, 2/1 flash. Counters a spell, mana value 2 or less, or you can pay 1 to green to give it +2/+2 until end turn, meaning it effectively has 5 mana, counter a spell, mana value 4 or less. You do have some good 3-drops already in this deck. You got Faithline Marshal and the one that untaps your lands, I forget the name of. But this is a nice little interactive piece. Could make the cut. The Ulvenvater is a very good 4-drop. You already have a good 4-drop in Omen Mare, but that mostly deals with non-creatures. If you want one that deals with a 4-drop that deals with creatures, you could play the Ulvenvater. It's a 4 mana 4/4 wolf. It's got flash, and whenever you cast your first spell during an opponent's turn, you can either make a 2/2 wolf or have one of your other creatures fight one of their creatures. Just a removal engine, a creature engine, big flash threat that kills your opponent. Your flash deck was always a little lacking in stuff that actually killed the opponent in a timely manner, and this can fill that role. Now let's talk about new packages. Synergy packages that didn't really exist before, but, well, they exist now. Starting with graveyard, just kind of general graveyard cards. There's, as I said, tons of graveyard synergy, and it's kind of a lot of stuff here for kind of a black-green, just having stuff in your graveyard deck. Disciple of Darker Powers is a 1 mana 2/1, enters tapped, mills a card and you lose a life, and you can pay 4 mana and exile 5 other cards from your graveyard to bring it back from your graveyard as a 5/4 Demon Horror. It's a fine, if you're looking for a 1-drop in your graveyard mid-range deck, it's probably Huskboar Draculite. But after Huskboar Draculite, maybe you play this one. On 3, you get Malignant Entangler, 1 green, 2/4 Reach Death Touch, so a real brick wall. And when it enters, you surveil 2. And then if there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you can pay 1 to black to blow up a non-land permanent. Yeah, it seems completely reasonable 3-drop for your kind of black-green graveyard deck. Devotion to Green Danu. Now, this is the spicy one. 3 mana for a ramp spell, legendary enchantment. You mill 2 cards, it gains 3 life, and then you get to bring a land card back. The land comes in untapped, and it doesn't have to be one of the cards you milled. So, Primal Fissure means you're going to have support for this pretty easily. And then if you have Threshold, for 5 mana, you can transform it, and the transformed side reanimates a permanent card at random on your end step every turn. That's pretty good. Especially on your, like, not great, but playable 3 mana ramp fill that gains you 3 life. Um, I think this card could enable this kind of graveyardish, mid-range-ish deck all on its own. Also have Markov Imperator on this slide. Probably shouldn't. It's a 6 mana 2/2 flying lifelink. Gets +1/+1 for each creature card in your graveyard. This is going to be enormous. You're going to make 2 mana and discard it to have one of your creatures gorge twice. This one's probably sketchy, but it is enormous and it does have lifelink. Blue-red spells gets an absolute ton of payoffs. Collected Thoughts is kind of a weird one. But blue-red spells is losing Savvy Smith and High Voltage and Forced Ejection, which were important cards to lose. But it's getting some exciting new stuff. Collected Thoughts is a weird one. 2 blue sorcery. Look at your top 6 cards. You get one of them into your hand, and then you can cast an instant sorcery from among them on of these 3 or less. There just aren't a lot of 3 mana sorceries that you're really wanting to play. I think this is probably just worse than 3 become 1 if you're looking for this effect. But it is cool and worth keeping an eye on if we start seeing more really good 3 mana sorceries in the future. 3 mana sorceries you kind of generically want to play, obviously. Obviously, there's Deafening Clarion and the like. Those are nice. The Haunting of Silburn is a 2 mana legendary enchantment, and whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. And for 1 in a blue, it becomes a 3/3 spirit with flying until end of turn. We have a ton of cheap spells, Stargazing, Discern, the Thought Scour from this set. And we've already seen from Clash and Mistred Vale how powerful just whenever you cast a spell, pump your whole board can be. It can generate multiplicative amounts of damage pretty easily. So we're definitely a scary card. It all comes together, more of a value card. Reminds me a little of a Lightspeed Launcher. Blue-red for an enchantment. When you cast a non-creature spell, it dings your opponent for 1, and the 3rd time your opponent gets dinged by any sources, each turn you draw a card. Stacks really well in multiples. If you're casting spells and hitting your opponent with creatures, it can easily draw a lot of cards. We have a ton of creatures that want you to cast instants or sorceries. Probably the best one is actually the uncommon, Demented Pyroalchemist. 2 mana 1/1. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you get a 1/1 with flying that can't block. Just a young Pyro that generates flying tokens. That's probably what you want out of your young Pyro. Also, for 1 in a red, you can give all of your small creatures haste until end of turn. That's just easy slot-in replacement for Savvy Smith as your guy that gets you value whenever you cast instant sorceries. You could also play Havenville Prodigy. 2 mana 0/4. When it enters, you infuse 2. So if you got an instant and a creature in your graveyard, you can make a 2/2. And you really want to make that 2/2 zombie, because whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you get a +1/+1 counter on a zombie. That 0/4 is a really annoying blocker against a lot of the Boros aggro stuff, and it can generate a ton of power as you're casting instant or sorceries. Just a great pile of stats here in your Spellslinger deck. More 2-drops. If you want a 2-drop that does a little more aggressive, you can play Ominous Frog. 2 mana 2/3. Cast an instant or sorcery, deals 1 damage to each opponent. Third time you do that, turns into a 5/4 menace, and whenever it attacks, you can cast an instant or sorcery at random from your graveyard, mana value 3 or less. Even if you're just getting cantrips off that's pretty good. So yeah, you really have your pick of 2 mana Spellslinger creatures. And also, we got a Tolarian Terror in these sets. Cordelia's Ripper is 7 reds, 3/4 flying haste, but it costs 1 left for each instant, sorcery, or vampire in your graveyard. Whenever it attacks, you deal 2 damage to any target. Very strong Tolarian Terror, going to get this down to 2 mana very quickly. Once again, you have to be worried about graveyard hate, but given this is probably your main graveyard caring about card in your deck, that's probably fine. Yeah, probably. We certainly have a density of Tolarian Terror between this one and the Chant one from Exalted Twill now. So you could have more of a 2 mana creature and then cast a lot of spells deck, or you could have more of a non-creature enchantment, non-creature cards like Clash at Mistred Vale and Haunting of Silburn, and all comes together and cast a bunch of spells, or you could have cast a bunch of spells and then finish with a Tolarian Terror. But you probably can't fit in all of those, but all of those sound like great options. Concord is the white-green mechanic from Innistrad, and we got some good Concord cards that make it worth considering. Dawn-Smite Cavalier, the 2 mana 3/2, when it enters, you tap the creature. That's already a pretty good ability, and you can bring it back from your graveyard to your hand for 3 mana if you have Concord. Hope's Trail Ranger, I think, is the best Concord payoff. 1 green, 1/3 reach. beginning of combat on your turn, you get a +1/+1 counter on a creature, and 4 more card types, you get +1 counter on each creature. Dawnhart Augur is another 3-drop, 3 mana, 2/3. You can play artifacts, enchantments, and land from the top of your library, and tap for 3 mana for artifact and enchantment spells if you have Concord. And then Sigarda up at 5 mana, 5 mana, 4/5. When it enters, you get to look at the top 6 and put a non-creature permanent mana value 3 or less from among them. And Concord gives your other angels and humans +1/+1. So it's pretty clear what these Concord decks wants. It wants 2 and 3 mana value permanents so land, you always have. All the good Conquer pairs are creatures, so you got creature. So what you really need is Artifact, Enchantment, Battle, Planeswalker, 2 of those types, and you really want to fulfill that on a single card, if possible, so you don't have to dig for too much stuff. And the 2 best options for that, I think, right now are Gone Pickin', enchantment that makes an artifact. Also, 3 mana is the right spot for Sigarda and Dawnhart Augur. And Onhame, which is a 3 mana Planeswalker that makes an artifact. Onhame, annoyingly, is not an artifact and enchantment for Dawnhart Augur, but it is a non-creature permanent card for Sigarda. There's other options. You could branch into red and play Shigana Manor Burns. You could kind of generate artifacts and enchantments, both of them incidentally, with various cards. But for my money, Gone Pickin' is the best enabler for this deck, and it seems reasonable, but probably pretty fair compared to the other things you could be doing, even in white-green. Hey, there's an 8 mana Planeswalker in Valir, and it's pretty good. 8 mana, Tesh, Fragment and Founder. I really hate double face non-land permanents, which is why this card designed by me has when Tesh enters, exile all double face non-land permanents. Also, +2 to Lightning Helix, -3 to make your opponent discard 2 and you draw 2, and -5 to mind control any non-land permanent. Again, we have Dark Earth Victory. Dark Earth Victory is a 4 mana sorcery that can reanimate a Planeswalker. And there's also, what's that card called? Stratustorm. It's 5 mana, and you can get the abilities of a Planeswalker. It's a creature. Yeah, this is going to be a pretty narrow deck, because your only reanimation spell is Dark Earth Victory, and the only card you want to get back is Tesh. You could even play Spite as a Founder in this deck. It's a 5 mana sweeper, but if you have a Tesh Planeswalker, it only kills your opponent's creatures. That's probably a joke, but it's very funny. Yeah. This deck's going to be inconsistent, but when you go turn 2 Shigana Manor Burns, turn 3 Dark Earth Victory for Tesh, you're going to win that game. Boy, you're going to win the heck out of that game. Ancient. So this is the blue-green mechanic from Valir, and boy, Ancient got the hookup. There's so much support for Ancient across both of these sets somehow. Shape the Pattern. 1 mana, search for basic land. If you're Ancient, instead search for creature or land. Glimpse the World Soul. 2 mana, draw a card. You can play an additional land this turn, so explore. But if you're Ancient, you draw 2 cards instead. Curse of Intimophobia. I think this might be the best Ancient enabler somehow. It's out of Innistrad. Blue-green. Blue-green for enchantment. You enchant yourself. You mill 3 cards, and whenever 1 or more land cards go into your graveyard from anywhere, you get a 1/1 blue and green insect creature token. Your Ancient deck is going to be putting land cards into your graveyard constantly. You're going to be putting cards into your graveyard with Primal Fissure, which you're going to play 4 of easily. You're going to put land cards into your graveyard with Root Fossil, which you're going to probably play 4 of as well, because it surveils land cards into your graveyard and then ramps you. You're going to put land cards in your graveyard with Reaper of Blossoms, which is also a druid nicely. And honestly, those plus like the Ancient, I think we saw a couple Ancient cards earlier, probably just enough. Like there's that Bristly Bill that gives you 4+1/+1 counters when you're Ancient. That card's probably going to be in this deck as well. You can play Innovative Alchemist. 3 mana, 2/4. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you surveil 1, or you can copy it if you're Ancient. We've already seen on the nerf. I already got Passive Scales nerfs for doing this, so we can see it. We've already seen it's a very powerful ability, especially with stuff like Stargazing, which you're probably playing anyways. Airy Layfeud is a 4 mana 4/4 Vigilance Reach that gives your spells flash, and if you are Ancient, you get Wilderness Reclamation. You get to untap all your lands on your end step, and it's a trigger, so you can actually use this to double your mana for instance, which is pretty good. Sorry, double your mana for anything. So you can just play Airy, immediately cast a 4-drop. Next turn, play a land, immediately cast a 10-drop on your end step. That's pretty good. Unfortunately, if you cast Emrakul this way, you don't get the end step trigger because it's already your end step. So that's probably not that good. If you're looking for a 5-drop, you could do a little worse than Loresk, Ever Curious. 5 mana, 3/5, landfall, draw cards, 3 mana, reanimate a land. Sure. Yeah. Just look like a blue-green value pile deck. Gonna need to find a way to actually win the game, which might be a problem. But the amount of value and blockers and life gain and ramp you can do seems pretty nice. This would be a great deck for some, especially because you have access to Shade the Pattern. Great deck if someone finds some kind of creature-based combo. Ninjas, by which I mean decks that want you to play 1 mana 1/1 flyers. We already have Sleeper Strix, 1 mana 1/2 that taps down a creature with flash and flying, and Veiled Branchstalker, 1 mana 1/1 flying, cycling 2 that can draw a card if a permanent you control left the battlefield without dying. And we're getting a lot of other reasons to put 1/1 flyers in your deck. We got Samari Pilfer as a Sleeper Strix, except it's a 1/1 instead of a 1/2. Uh, and the big new reason to put a bunch of 1/1 flyers in your deck is Expert Infiltration. 1 mana for a curiosity, you put it on a creature, whatever that creature deals combat damage to your opponent, you surveil one, draw a card. Wait a minute. Oh god, you can put this on your opponent's creatures, can't you? Sorry, enchant a creature. Whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player, so if you put it on your opponent's creatures, they get punished for hitting you with it. That's very funny. But you're mostly going to put this on your own 1/1 flyers and hit your opponent to draw a card. Whenever enchanted creature comes blocked, you're hoping that never happens. It gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So yeah, this is a very simple game plan. Turn 1/1 flyer, turn 2 Expert Infiltration, pass, hopefully leave up Pass Judgment, the counter spell from Kitsuo Dusk of Time. Hope your opponent doesn't have a way to interact with your 1/1 flyer. If they don't interact with it for a couple turns, you win the game because you're drawing a bunch of cards. Other things you could do while you're hitting your opponent with 1/1 flyers is play Rooftop Observer to get a future sight, play Greedy Deserter to draw a whole bunch of cards, or play Covet as a 2 mana draw 2. Oh, and I guess you could actually play ninjas in your ninjas deck. That's also a possibility. Maybe once some of them get buffed. Pursuit. There's 2 really good enchantments in Valir, Do Reward and It's Just Business, that have enter triggers that are basically worth a card. It's Just Business, makes each one discard a card. Do Reward, which is actually a potentially playable Concord Concord enabler as well. It mills 3 cards, and then you can return a creature or land from under to your hand. They can both pay 3 mana and sacrifice them to make a treasure token, untapped even. We've seen with cards like Omen of Deception, Omen of Slaughter, how valuable Phoenix's Touch, how valuable 1 mana enchantment that does something on enter can be. You could bounce it, you could blink it, you could it could contribute to just having a permanent of that type in play. Or you could sacrifice it to Pursuit cards. Now, I've already talked about 2 good Pursuit cards, Wily Assailant, Veteran Hunter. If you're enabling Wily Assailant and Veteran Hunter, these enchantments are probably the way you're doing it. There's also another Pursuit card, a little more all-in, with Ruthless Stalker. 1 black-green, 4/4 Menace Trample for Pursuit for only 2 mana. I think a deck that plays these cheap enchantments and then has a lot of ways to make use of them is a definite possibility. Okay, final stretch, Typal decks. Both of these sets with a bunch of creature types, they're kind of a light touch. I don't see a lot of all-in creature type decks in Revolution's future, but I see some potential for kind of light creature type touches in certain decks. I already mentioned Secluded Courtyard. There's some other choose a creature type cards in Valir, including Perfect Plan, 4 mana enchantment that gives your creatures of that type flash, and whenever you cast them, you draw a card. Unending Unrest is another 4 mana enchantment, gives all of the creatures when they enter the deal damage equals their power to any target. In your creature type matters deck, you got to play your creatures of the type, obviously, and you got to play the payoff for that type, and you also just have to play some generically good cards like Removal and other good creatures. So you don't have a ton of room for value enchantments like this, but I could see seeing some play 1 or 2 of them, or you could bring them out of the sideboard as like a value off. Like if you're like, oh, I'm going to phase against control, I'm going to bring in this, or like a grindy midrange, I'm going to bring in Perfect Plan, and that'll be my card draw engine against grindy midrange. That's definitely possible. Druids get only 2 payoffs, but one of them's really good. Umber Grove Tender is Risen Reef, but for Druids. 3 mana, 1/1. When it or another Druid you control enters, look at your top card. Land cards go onto the battlefield tapped, otherwise they go into your hand. That's a really, really good Druid payoff. The other Druid payoff is Evrax's Enlightened Endling. 7 mana, 4/4 Dragon Druid, Flying Trample Ward 2. When it attacks, you surveil 2, and another druid you control get +1/+1 for each land card in your graveyard. So it's going to be like +5/+5 or something. Yeah, this is certainly a game ender in your druids deck. I don't know if you need a 7 mana game ender in your druids deck, but it's there if you want it. And a lot of very playable cards are already druids. Reaper of Blossoms the druid. Concurrent Escapist. That's pretty good if Umber Grove Tender because it gives you 2 triggers. Aurora the druid. Blinded Visionary is a druid. So I imagine a druid deck is just like a blue-green value deck. It might also overlap with the ancient deck somewhat that just plays Umber Grove Tender and hopes to trigger it with its other like 3 or 4 druids. Rogues. There's only really one playable rogue in Rev right now. It's called Cash Thrasher. It's a pretty good rogue. And we're getting a lot of new rogues. Rooftop Runner is a 2 mana rogue. Enters with a +1/+1 counter if an opponent lost life this turn. and gives your other rogues Bloodthirst 1. Um, Pretty useful. Annoyingly for Rooftop Runner, the really good rogues at 3 mana all the really good rogues have haste, so you don't want to play them after your opponent lost life. So I think this one might fall by the wayside for that reason. We're getting some very good 3 mana rogue payoffs. Daring Escapees, this 3 mana 3/1 with haste, and as long as you keep playing rogues, your opponent does not get to block ever again. Turn Untouchable is another 3 mana 3 power haste rogue. When it enters, you tap to a creature, so more ways to get blockers out of the way. And whenever a rogue you control becomes blocked, or deals combat damage to a player, you can bounce it back to your hand. So if you have rogues with enter triggers, or if you just want to prevent your rogues from trading off in combat, you can use this ability. I think Daring ACPs is probably the better 3 mana 3 power haste rogue for your 3 mana 3 power haste rogue slot. Um, and Cast Thrasher into Daring ACPs looks like a properly evil curve. Overprepared Accomplice is a value card for your rogue deck, 3 mana 3/3. Whenever a rogue you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. And little extra icing. Whenever this creature attacks, you can give another attacking creature menace. Yeah. So the rogue game plan is clear. Hasty creatures, saboteur triggers, ways to get blockers out of the way. I think Cash Thrasher, Daring SCPs, and maybe Overprepared Accomplice are a pretty solid rogue passage just on their own. Which is good, because there's not a lot of other great rogues for them to use. Warlocks. Warlocks is in kind of a weird spot. There's a ton of really great 2 mana Warlocks in Rift right now. Exorcist of Errors, Catabalist, Unmaker Thought, Tendervow Witch. But the Warlock payoffs? They're kind of come see, come sa. Fel'Zadon Believer is a removal spell, 2 mana, instant, deals 4 damage to attacking or blocking creature. Lifelink if you control a Warlock, that's a lot of life gain, I guess. Sanctum Deathspeaker is a 2 mana 1/2. Other Warlocks you control enter with an additional +1/+1 counter. And you pay 1 tap and sack another creature to put a +1 counter on this creature. It's a fine way to get +1/+1 counters on your creatures, but nothing special. Sorolla Vile Preacher is a 2 mana 2/2. Whenever another Warlock you control dies, it drains your opponent for 1. And if you can gain 3 life in a turn, you can draw a card. Kind of Tendervow Witch, I guess, is good at gaining life. Yeah. So I think you might see something like Sanctum Deathspeaker or Sorolla, or Fel'Zadon Believer in play in a deck that incidentally plays a bunch of Warlocks, but there's not a lot of like there's nothing that pays you off for Warlocks the same way it pays you off for having Druids. But the Warlocks themselves are really strong, so it makes up for it. Moving to the Innistrad types, Vampires get 2 big payoffs, and of course, all of the Innistrad types get a untapped dual land, which is a nice payoff. There's only one playable vampire in Rev right now. It is Catabalist, and it does really work with the vampires stuff. Vampires do like discarding cards and creatures that bring themselves back from the graveyard, and they can occasionally remove a card from their graveyard to enable Catabalist, so that's not bad. Olivia Sanguine Reveler is a 4 mana 3/3 flying haste. Whenever a vampire you control attacks, you can have it gorge. That's pretty good payoff if you're willing to do the vampire thing. 3 toughness, obviously, you could get sniped by a removal spell before attacks. That'd be pretty sad. Envoy of the Red Court, 2 mana 2/2 Lord for your vampires, reward pay 2 life. 2 of the red 1-drops we drew attention to are all vampires, so this could be good, just kind of more of a vampire's aggro shell. Indulgent Patrician is 3 mana 3/2 that makes your opponent discard a card, or you can discard a card to put a +1 counter on each of your vampires, and whenever a player discards a card, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. I think this card, you need to be having other vampires to make it worth playing, but not that many other vampires. Just 3 mana 3/2, drain your opponent for 1, make them discard a card is already pretty close. So yeah, vampires, I'm not sure quite has enough support to get there, but these payoffs are certainly strong. Humans are a lot like Warlocks in that we have a ton of great humans, but the payoffs for them are only okay. Salia the Guiding Blade is 3 mana for 3/2 first strike. And it Trinispheres all non-creature spells. This is going to moderately annoy control decks and completely hose prowess decks. Whenever she attacks, you can pay 5 mana to put a +1/+1 counter on each human you control. I think Salia, reasonable sideboard card for prowess. Although the fact that she just dies to a removal spell means she's not that effective. I think having access to some humans is going to just barely put Salia over the edge, which he probably will. Hopeless Bow is a 2 mana equipment. Whenever a creature you control enters, you gain a life, and if it's a human, you can pay a green or white to attach the bow to it. A creature gets +2/+1 as reach in ward 1. Little bit of life gain, little bit of buffs. I think probably a little fair, to be honest, but could see some play. Good grindy card, gains life. In the Face of Darkness is a 2-mana enchantment. When it enters, you gain 3 life and Surveil 1. It gives your human +1/+1. Could be a Concord enabler if you're looking for an enchantment for your Concord decks. And if you happen to have all humans, 2-mana Anthem's not bad. And the Surveil 1 is nice. And I have over here on the left just some of the many great humans already in Revolution. Melon, Genotype Splicer, Skyray Tender. I mean, there's tons of them. Like half the creatures in Revolution are humans. Zombies. There's only blue-black zombies is a very well-supported type. Unfortunately, there's only one really playable zombie in blue and black coming into this rotation. It's Vardo's Scalpel. 1 mana, 2/2 menace. Whenever attack deals 2 to you. That's a fine aggro card. I think the biggest zombie payoff is Captain Fallmore. 1 mana, 1/1. Whenever one or more zombie cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, which is, you can do that in a lot of different ways, get the +1 counter, and it's the card draw engine. 1 to black, 2 life, exile 3 cards from your graveyard to draw a card. So I think 1 mana 1/1 with this exile 3 with this card draw engine is already pretty good, and getting bigger pretty efficiently as you mill and discard and kill your zombies, pretty nice. Zombies also get a 2 mana Lord and Stonegraph Awakener. 2 mana 2/2 menace gives your zombies +1/+1. Also makes your infuses better. Some of the zombies infuse, so this could do something. Grave Butcher's an interesting payoff. 2 mana 2/1 that can't block, but when it dies, you can pay black to return a Grave Butcher and another zombie from your graveyard to your hand. 2 mana 2/1 is kind of ignorable, is the main problem with this card. Your opponent can just take the 2 for a while and you won't get your Death Trigger value, and you have to leave up black a lot. But it is certainly a lot of value if you can get it to die at a convenient time for you. There's some other, Vardo Ravalon is the other playable zombie right now, although it is black-green, so it's slightly awkward. While I think that Fallmore and Stonegraph Awakener are the main zombie payoffs, there's of course the blue-black untapped land, that's nice. There's also Dirge of the Drowned, just 2 mana, get one of your top 3 into your hand, rest go into your graveyard, you lose a life, flashback for blue and discard a zombie card, just a nice little digging card advantage spell you can play in your zombie deck. The Cull Abomination is a 5 mana 4/4 that comes with a 2/2 and you mill 2 cards, and whenever a zombie enters, you get a 2/2 and mill 2 cards, and you can pay a life and exile a card from your graveyard to add colorless. Can't spend it on X spells, but you can spend it on anything else. This is a way to cast Emrakul, or any of your other payoffs. I think Claw Abomination might be a little fair. I mean, not that fair. It does generate mana for life, but a little slow, and not exact. The zombies deck looks pretty aggressive, not exactly what this card wants, but it is very cool. And I could imagine this having combo or late game potential somewhere. Last creature type, Werewolf. So I've already mentioned some pretty playable werewolves. There's Profane Invoker is this 3 mana 3/2 haste. Huntmaster of the Fells is coming back. Erstwhile Brigands is the 5 mana 5/5 haste that bites something that lets you bite something. Lonely Cabin is the untapped duel for this deck. Let me pile on 2 other werewolves. There's Tovalar Wolfbound, 2 mana 3/2 that gives your savage creatures whenever they come targeted, draw a card and doubles your transform trigger. Fangright Mistress is a 2 mana 2/1 flash that dings your opponent, and when it transforms, it puts +1 counters on your wolves and werewolves. Wolves and werewolves have always had trouble in constructed because your opponent can just cast a 1 mana instant on your turn and then your cards don't work. I don't think any of these wolves or werewolves are so powerful or so good of an enabler to make you do that. Except for one. Embers of a New Moon is 1 mana instant. You have to behold a wolf or whale for pay 2, exile top 2 cards, you can play them until the end of your next turn. That's just a crazy good werewolf payoff. 1 mana, draw 2. Werewolves just have access, and you don't even have to have a werewolf in play. You're going to be in your hand. Werewolves just get access to Thoughtcast. Better Thoughtcast. It's an instant. If werewolves become the thing, it'll be because of Embers of a New Moon. And you're really going to think, how few bad werewolves do I have to put in my deck to actually play Embers of a New Moon? Because the 3 mana version is pretty bad. I think that's the puzzle for werewolves, is just this one card. Okay, one last typal-ish thing. Witching Hour. I have no idea how to evaluate this card. X, black, black, black. Target player's life total becomes 13 if you want. And you can search your library for a curse card with mana value twice X or less and put it onto the battlefield enchanting them. Curse of Arcane Offerings is the Blood Artist curse. Curse of Insidious Thoughts hates on people who are trying to put cards in their hand without drawing them. Curse of Searing Ground punishes people for tapping non-basic lands and looks pretty mean. Is black, black, black. Target player's life total becomes 13 a good card? Gonna be honest, I have absolutely no idea what's going on with Witching Hour. If I had to make a guess right now, I'd expect it's cool, but just barely not good enough. But I could easily imagine this becoming a very weird, very powerful toolbox card. So I'm going to leave you guys on a question. Is Witching Hour good? Well, we'll have to play to find out. Thank you for watching. This has been the Innistrad, Witching Hour, and Valir, the Banished Isle set review. So glad you could join me. I'm super excited for these two sets. Super proud of Matt and Coveted Peacock for getting this far. Long live Revolution, Custom Standard, and good night.